This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with James O'Brien.
It's 3 minutes after 10. A very good morning to you. I don't know. It's one of those days where you curse your inability. You sort of want an algorithm in which you can feed in everything that is genuine, well, everything that is being treated as important, and get some sort of objectivity algorithm to churn out what actually is important. But you can't do that. There is no objective algorithm for deciding what is important and what isn't. It's like the difference between public opinion and public interest. Doing something that is not that popular might be more important than doing something that would sort of get the crowds cheering. I was thinking about Ted Heath quite a lot at the weekend. Please don't take that comment out of context. And I was thinking about how brave it was of him to stamp on Enoch Powell when he did. Because Enoch Powell spoke for an awful lot of people with his racist diatribe. And it also would have appealed to an awful lot of members of the Conservative Party. It could have signalled a sea change in our post-war politics. And an awful lot of the people, the millions of the people who were invited here to help us rebuild the country, could have become victims and targets of even more vitriol and hatred than they were already. That would have been, I think, Enoch Powell's intent when he delivered his Rivers of Blood speech. And both Harold Wilson, the leader of the Labour Party, and crucially his boss, Ted Heath, moved quickly to close him down, to shut him up, and to deny him the oxygen of promotion and publicity. You sort of wonder about the counterfactual, what the world would have been like, what the United Kingdom would have been like, had Powell's visions been allowed to thrive, being fed, for example, by mainstream media. I don't know, actually. I'm pretty good on the history of right-wing newspapers. I don't know what the Daily Mail's relationship was with Enoch Powell. I could talk you through Oswald Mosley. I could talk you through their attitudes, very changing attitudes to Nigel Farage, but I don't know what their attitudes were to the sort of most famous racist politician of the 20th century in this country, Enoch Powell. But I wonder where the world, or at least the country, would have gone had he not been closed down by Ted Heath. I don't know who has condemned Elon Musk for his comments in London on Saturday, but I didn't hear any booing. We have a problem with wealth, and this is true of the left and the right. Someone is really, really, really rich. They believe they should be above the rules and regulations, the requirements and traditions that the rest of us must live by. You don't have to be rich. You could just be sociopathic. You remember those comments that Boris Johnson's teacher at Eton made about him thinking that the normal rules just don't apply to him. But we also agree with that. There comes a point, doesn't there, when you sort of think that somebody is it above the law? It's not quite the law, it's subtler than the law. It's a level of wealth that buys you an impunity that the rest of us can barely imagine, where you know you're so rich and so powerful that nobody can ever really touch you. And that leaves politicians with a huge problem. Do you know, I got sent a clip over the weekend by a pal and I've seen it loads of times, and I've mentioned it to you before, but he was convinced that I was possessed of some sort of clairvoyant skills, that I was the mystic Meg of media. Because I was on Have I Got News For You a long time ago, and I knew very little about Elon Musk that week. I think it was just the space stuff that he was doing long before he bought Twitter and turned it into a sewer. And I described him as a Bond villain. I think the Bond villain that I had in mind was is it Jonathan Pryce in The World Is Not Enough, or have I got my references mixed up? And I just felt that the only space in which we encounter that level of power is in fiction. Before the tech bros, before the Bezoses and the Zuckerbergs, I guess you had it in the 19th century with industrial barons, people who made all their money out of coal and oil and mills. But I don't know in the second half of the 20th century that we had that kind of that wealth so huge that it almost renders an individual more powerful than a government. And that is the problem that we've got today. The scenes on Saturday were very striking. The numbers were very high. I don't know how helpful it is for people on my side of the political divide to point out that they were a fraction of the turnout for the Please Let's Not Leave the European Union marches and the like, because that's a bit of whataboutery. The numbers were huge. From the point of view of the serial criminal that organised it, it was an enormous success. And I am prepared to believe at this point that some of the people who went there were sort of perfectly prepared to ignore the provenance of who was behind the whole thing and who they were potentially marching alongside, and they did have what people like to describe as legitimate concerns. But think about what those legitimate concerns are. Very hard this morning to feel sorry for Keir Starmer. But goodness me, the overall immigration figures have come down faster and further than at almost any point in living memory. You can, of course, argue that they were too high to start with, but if that's your problem, if that's your beef, the fact that they have come down faster and further than at almost any other point in living memory should surely have cheered you right up and given you loads of cause for celebration. It struck me as well yesterday while I was thinking about Ted Heath on the plane back from Dublin that you also have this extraordinary... We should have noticed this, and I apologise to you for not spotting that as soon as the government changed, the story, the narrative about immigration was going to change as well. As soon as the government changed and the Tories were no longer in power, then the Tory press was going to start banging the immigration drum harder than it had ever banged it before. No matter that the problems were literally caused, the latest, quotes, problems, end quotes, were literally caused by Brexit and Boris Johnson's determination to paper over the cracks that he had caused in, for example, care and hospitality by allowing people to come here while pretending that they couldn't. No matter that the likes of people like Chris Philp complain about the number of asylum seekers in hotels, while the number is measurably and demonstrably lower than it was when he was a Home Office minister. Once these genies are out of the bottle, there's almost nothing you can do to get them back in. So if you were vaguely interested in statistics or evidence, then you should have been having your massive march through London 5 years ago. You should have been having your massive march through London to complain about the consequences of Brexit. But there it goes. There it goes. There goes the truth over that horizon, disappearing at a million miles an hour. And what replaces it? Well, extraordinary claims from somebody who must qualify as one of the most powerful men in the world, not just by dint of his wealth, but by dint of his ownership of what we used to call Twitter. We must have revolutionary government change. That's fine. You'll find someone at Speaker's Corner every Sunday down at Hyde Park saying something similar. It could have been Jeremy Corbyn. We must have revolutionary government change. Could have been Bernie Sanders. This really requires everyone to sort of marshal the people. What does that mean? Well, I mean, genuinely, what does that mean? To marshal the people, to take charge, okay, by democracy, to reform the government and make sure that you actually have a government that is for the people, by the people. This is a foreign billionaire interfering in British democracy, negating and challenging sovereignty, which I thought that a certain section of our society cared passionately about, and apparently demanding some sort of overthrow. And then violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. The left is the party of murder and celebrating murder. And people on the left were openly celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. I saw something extraordinary on social media. I'm on the Blue Sky platform, which is imperfect, but there's a reason why organs like the Financial Times and The Economist and anybody else, any other outfit dedicated to impartiality now put the bulk of their output on there. But I saw something on there that was frankly incredible, actually, even as quite a careful student of these matters. And this is on the platform that Musk owns. The AI bot, is that the right word to use? Grok, it's called, G-R-O-K, the sort of AI option that operates on X, answers your questions using its ability to sift through all of the reportage and journalism and statistics and details that are available. And they wrote, Grok, the thing he literally owns, and which is supposed to be a sort of impartial arbiter of facts. In response to a question, it wrote, based on recent reports, Charlie Kirk was killed on September the 10th, 2025 by suspect Tyler Robinson, whose online activity referenced far-right memes and fascism. Voter records show no party affiliation, but some sources link him to conservative views. Right, I'll carry on reading that in a minute. The rest... this is me speaking now. I don't think from what I've been following you can make any major statements about what his motivation was at the moment. He seems to have been terminally and perennially online, and the notion of a political ideology has certainly not been established and may well never be, which brings us back to where we were last week, which is this sort of violence is awful, whoever does it. This sort of violence is disgusting, whoever does it. If he turns out to be a lifetime membership of the Democrats, the action of assassination is disgusting. If he turns out to be a lifetime member of the Republican Party, the action of assassination is disgusting. There are days when I sit here and I'm conscious of the camera. There are days when I'm not conscious of the camera, but I'm conscious of the camera when I can't quite believe that I'm having to say what I'm having to say. There are two types of people in this world. People who are in favour of political assassinations and people who are not. People who think that all political assassinations are awful and trying to use them to score political points or to make political capital is absolutely reprehensible, dangerous and quite possibly insightful. And there are people who don't believe that. There are people who will seize upon the opportunity to make hay from a murder because they are either lying or persuaded or correct in thinking that the murderer has certain political views. And Grok goes on. Remember, this is the thing that Musk actually owns. Melissa Hortman and her husband were killed in June 2025 by Vance Bolter, a confirmed Trump voter. And then the statistics. ADL data shows, I presume that's the Anti-Defamation League, but I should probably have double-checked. 75% of US extremist murders between 2013 and 2022 were by right-wing actors. Those sources like CSIS note rising far-right threats, while Cato emphasizes overall rarity and includes other ideologies. That's Cato Institute. Definitions of political murders vary across studies. Relatively uncontroversial. I mean, uncomfortable reading for people pretending that their political opponents on the left are more likely or guaranteed to engage in political violence. But again, if you subscribe to the view that all political violence is reprehensible, then it's not uncomfortable reading at all. Elon Musk himself wrote, "My apologies, we are fixing this cringe idiocy by Grok." So on the platform I own, the engine I provide, the means that we provide to allow you to get unbiased and impartial answers to your questions, has provided an answer I don't like, therefore I'm going to change it. But he's the free speech guy, censoring an actual computer program. If, again, that's the correct vocabulary. And speaking of vocabulary, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. Violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. Speaking to between 100 and 150,000, the official figure seems to be about 110,000 people in London. Most of them wouldn't have been able to hear it, but you can hear it now. You either fight back or you die. I mean, can I say, what's he talking about? Can I ask that question? Does anybody actually know? Does everybody know, but nobody's prepared to say it? What on earth is he talking about? When was the last time an incredibly powerful person on this planet whose politics don't seek to blame immigrants or foreigners for all the problems of our society? When was the last time one of them told you to be violent? It could be rhetorical. But an awful lot of the less pleasant reactions to Charlie Kirk's killing last week were rhetorical, and that hasn't stopped people making lists, rounding up names, agitating for them to get fired. The free speech champions, marking the murder of a free speech champion, their words, not mine, by calling for people to be fired or worse for exercising free speech. Elon Musk addressed a British audience in Britain, albeit via satellite technology, and told them that violence is coming to you. This is the most ultimate provocation, to tell people that if they don't fight, then they will be victims. Violence is coming to... Well, have a listen yourself.
Violence is going to come to you. You will have no choice. You're in a fundamental situation here where whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die. And that's the truth.
Not hearing many boos there, if any. I mean, and to be fair, I'm sure spirits were high, but for goodness sake, do we know what he was talking about here? So there are two questions. What is he actually saying? 0345 6060 973. And while I obviously am a great believer in free speech, I should probably caution you to think before you contribute to the programme, because some people don't like you exercising your free speech. And the second question is, should Keir Starmer be doing more about this? That there seems to be a division among the bien-pensant or the liberal intelligentsia, or just the people who don't think that some poor fella who fell off a boat last week is responsible for the fact that you haven't got a pay rise this year. There seems to be some dispute about whether or not Keir Starmer should be doing more, should be addressing this. He's made a speech about being opposed to the co-opting of flags. But what is happening here? It doesn't come from the sky like big bombs. It creeps up on you. Martin Rosen wrote something quite brilliant about the carpet-slippered creep. The carpet-slippered creep. You don't notice that it's happening. If this speech had been made 10 years ago, what would our reaction be? There wouldn't have been 110,000 people out in London. And I think we would have had the confidence and the courage to say, hey, foreign billionaire, get out of our heads. Stop telling our neighbours that they should be attacking us. If that's what he's doing. And if that is what he's doing, then what should Keir Starmer be doing about it? Sovereignty, big word in recent years. Well, I mean, that got ridden roughshod over, if I've understood these words correctly. Freedom of speech, that got ridden roughshod over, if I've understood his words correctly. Democracy, that got ridden roughshod over, if I've understood his words correctly. Peace. The advocate opposition to all violence, up to and including the murder of political activists, however unpleasant you find their views. Absolutely, diametrically, incontrovertibly, irrefutably, unapologetically, 100% opposed to it. Always, whoever it is. But you either fight back or die. Violence is coming to you. So if you wanted to argue that it was rhetorical, and people say stupid things, of course they do. But when you say violence is coming to you, I don't see how that's rhetorical. Do you? Or metaphorical? Violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. What is he talking about? 0345 6060 973. Hit the numbers now. You will get through. I've got views. I think. I don't really know, and he may not know either. But what do you think he is talking about when he says violence is coming to you? You either fight back or you die. And Keir Starmer, I don't think, has acknowledged this speech in any way, shape or form. Simple question. I'm not sure that the answer is 100% clear. Should he? Should he be doing more? Hit the numbers now, you will get through. What is Elon Musk talking about? And how should Keir Starmer respond, if at all? I really need to hear what you have to say today, because I was a bit out of the loop over the course of the weekend. I'll spare you the grisly details, but I nearly fell at the IKEA fence. There were moments, particularly late on Saturday, when I could quite conceivably have set fire to the entire flat pack assembled in one of my daughter's student homes. So I haven't been as plugged into the news as I should be, which means I go on a little bit of a crash course on Monday morning. And these words, well, I think they might be terrifying. Have one more listen to them, and then I promise we'll start taking some calls. But you know what happens when I'm wrestling with the fear that something rather huge is unfolding, and hardly anybody else seems to be noticing.
Violence is going to come to you. You will have no choice. You're in a fundamental situation here where whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die. And that's the truth.
What's the truth? 0345 6060 973. And what should Keir Starmer be doing about this?
James O'Brien on LBC.
25 is the time, and it's not that often, and it's certainly been a long time, that I feel as if we're doing a Rubik's Cube together in the morning, and except that, or it's like some sort of mystery jigsaw, or it's one of those dreadful things from the 1980s, those optical illusions where you stare at something for long enough, and then finally the image that's hidden in all the squiggles and whatnots, the magic eye it was called, finally the image comes into view. But a foreign billionaire who owns Twitter and has turned it into a sort of far-right a farm or sewer or spawning ground or whatever you want to call it, has addressed a huge crowd in London and encouraged violence. He's warned them that they're going to be victims of violence, and he has encouraged them to head off that as yet unrealised threat with violence. He has told them to fight back or die. What is he talking about? And what should Keir Starmer be doing? Alex is in Bournemouth. Alex, what would you like to say?
Morning, James.
Hello, Alex.
I guess Musk is sort of engaging in what a lot of the right has done for eons, which is this is a case of stochastic terrorism. It's a lot of, to explain that quickly, it's usually influential figures being very vague about particular threats, and it's not to necessarily attack a particular thing, but it's to create the inevitability that somebody will cause an attack. And we've actually had it a lot in the UK as well. It's why, let's say, reform keeps going on about the boats and all the hotels. And we saw that in the summer where there was more and more fervour about boats and the hotels, and eventually there were more attacks on hotels because they kept using inflammatory rhetoric. And this is something that they've done, and it's also what the Republican Party have done and continue to do after the assassination.
I mean, I giggle about they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, but it's a textbook example of what you describe, and it's the palatable one, isn't it? Because, I mean, you know, with greatest of love and respect for pet lovers, very few people are going to be more troubled by claims about the treatment of animals than they are by claims about the treatment of humans. But the lie is the same. It's designed to portray, as you say, a kind of homogenous blob of often unspecified people as savages.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
and that is what could be happening here. Who is going to be... Savages are coming to attack you. Savages are coming to you. Violence is coming to you. Savages are coming... I can see what you're saying, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, after the murder of Charlie Kirk, even before... there's still no evidence, but they immediately went for it's the left or it is trans. You have a Republican Representative Nancy Mace going... two interviews saying that they must be pro transler and asking for the death penalty. But then as soon as they found out who the culprit was, she changed it to we have to pray for this person. Something must have radicalized them, because they don't actually have an interest in finding the cause. They have an interest in holding political power, and by removing opponents, by creating essentially hysteria.
In much the same way that when the Southport killer turned out to be none of the things that the racists in public life in this country claimed that he was, nothing actually changed. The anger didn't dissipate, and nobody went home, and people carried on calling for hotels to be set on fire, if memory serves. What should Keir Starmer do?
Well, I think what's important to note as well is that political violence isn't just physical. There is a lot of political violence that happens in our government, which is caused by a lot of this similar rhetoric being used to get policies through, which you saw through, like, the hotels, which is now turning to military bases. That is a level of political violence because you are dehumanising groups and then, therefore, putting them in situations which make them more destitute. Same with the welfare cuts. What I'm disappointed about with Keir Starmer is that they seem to just be going along the tide of just saying it's free speech. Like,
Peter Kyle did that. And I mean, I get that, actually, because that's the irony, isn't it? There's 110,000 people marching through London saying whatever the hell they want, waving flags and shouting things and claiming that their free speech is under threat. I mean, you don't even need to be snobby about it, and I wouldn't want to be snobby about it, because Kemp Badenoch's writing in the Daily Mail today about free speech being under threat, and you sort of think, well... I mean, imagine what it would be like if you couldn't just phone up the editor of the Daily Mail and ask for half a page to share whatever splurges it is that you're worried about today, because that doesn't look to me like somebody whose free speech is under threat. Some person gets his collar felt at the airport because he's posted some pretty stupid tweets. If he's waking up in jail for life, then our free speech is under threat. If you're having your interventions in public life unnecessary, in my opinion, and traumatic, I'm sure, it doesn't exactly speak of a nationwide problem or a nationwide threat. Very famous people can't make inappropriate jokes without being very briefly detained by authorities. Is not, to my mind, kind of, goose steps up the garden path in the middle of the night. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. That idea there is what Peter Carr was trying to portray. Actually, how can you claim your freedom of speech is under threat when you're literally exercising it on an unprecedented scale? But that's not far enough in your view, and to specifically address Elon Musk hasn't really been done yet.
No. I think as well, it's with the right side of leaning political things, it's a lot of them cry wolf about the fact that they don't get to say what they want to say. And I can honestly ask you, how many times have you had people on your show or heard from other shows? What can you not say? It's not that
what is it you're not allowed to say?
Exactly, and then it's not necessarily that they can't say it, it's that they can't say it without public scrutiny, because that is the honest truth. They're not illegally allowed to say it.
Do you know what it is?
Yeah, it's racism.
Always?
It's 100% racism. For the most part, I feel like a lot of it is racism. Like, I mean...
I can't say what I want to say. Because I want to say that the colour of my skin makes me a better person than you, or the colour of your skin means you should get punched or punished or discriminated against.
But the reality of the situation is that it's racism because they've been conditioned to think it's racism. Because politicians, a lot of them say, like, it's the votes, it's the invasion from foreign lands, it's all this stuff.
But all that's coming down. All that's I mean, statistically, I'm late for the news. Hey, you can get exercised about the boats. Of course you can. That's absolutely your right in a free democracy, and you can complain about it until the cows come home. But if it's numbers you're worried about, you've got to start counting. And everything is coming down. To the detriment, in my view, in the long term of the country, certainly to demographics that we're going to need to look after people who are getting older. But that's by the by. It's all coming down. It's this Starmer's curse, in a way. It feels like a Greek tragedy. Sending people back today on that French deal, the one-in, one-out deal, whether it works or not, is immaterial, really. It's not going to make any of the people that were marching through London at the weekend go, actually, I think I'll stay at home next time. At least, I don't think it is, because if it's the numbers you care about, why don't you care more about the numbers? Thomas Watts has your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:36 is the time. Something else struck me on the way home on Friday, and I couldn't quite work out what it was. It was. I think, again, it was in the Mail. Kemp Badenoch is in the Daily Mail today, writing about how free speech is under threat. Nigel Farage was in the Daily Mail last week, writing about the murder of Charlie Kirk. And it suddenly struck me that I think he literally wrote that freedom of speech should be absolute unless you actually incite violence. Actually, let me double-check that quote for you, because if I've remembered it correctly, then even by his standards, the level of hypocrisy on display is going to be pretty immense. And speaking of hypocrisy, the coverage... So, do you remember Bob Vylan, that previously little-known rap duo who started chanting death to the IDF at Glastonbury? They've exercised their freedom of speech at the weekend in ways that I consider to be reprehensible. Celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk is, to me, disgusting. Whether or not it should be criminal is a matter for state legislators, I suppose. But listen to what he said. This is a report from the De Telegraaf newspaper in the Netherlands. F the fascists, fair enough. F the Zionists, tricky, because as we've discussed many times on this programme, that word can mean many different things. But then he adds, go find them in the streets. I mean, no one's going to be able to claim that that is a call to adopt violence against members of an army engaged in what many people consider to be a genocide. If you're at a concert in Amsterdam and you shout to your crowd to go find them in the streets, I think that you are bang out of order and quite possibly lurching into criminality and should be treated accordingly. I think there was a fella at the weekend calling for Keir Starmer. Didn't even say it on camera, calling for Keir Starmer to be killed. I hope he gets his collar felt. Freedom of speech is not under threat in this country, but some people abuse it horribly, and I think that's a good example, albeit it's a couple of relatively obscure pop stars performing in front of 1,500 fans. In many ways, Elon Musk was performing in front of the entire world when he elected to be interviewed by the serial criminal Tommy Robinson, a man who thinks nothing of jeopardising the trial of people accused of being in Muslim grooming gangs. It's one of the reasons he's got into trouble in the past. Contempt of court in order to, I don't know what he's trying to do, attract attention to himself. He is prepared to risk jeopardising the trial of people accused of the crimes that he claims to care so much about when they're committed by a certain ethnicity against white girls. He doesn't ever have anything to say about similar crimes being committed by people of different backgrounds and ethnicities, even when they are members of his own organisations. But how does that work? How does it work? How does Elon Musk get to do something like this on the biggest imaginable stage and get no response from the UK government, including, and I don't know what they've done since this happened, but how can the UK government even stay on that platform now? Do you ever think of pivot points? Robert, I'll be with you, I swear, in like 1 minute, but it's one of those days where I didn't realise how much I had to say and still I started talking. I think of pivot points, the moments that will be used by historians of the future to map a really major descent into something really awful. So you've got January the 6th, right? And the responses to January the 6th. For 10 minutes, even some people who'd been sucking Donald Trump's toes until relatively recently, for 10 minutes or so, even they acknowledged the awfulness of what was going on. But hey-ho, the clock turns and they're back to being buddies again, or they're back to not describing it in the correct ways. January the 6th was awful. Seditionists and insurrectionists and political violence on an unimaginable scale being visited upon the very heart of US government. But then the pardons came along. That's an even bigger pivot. For a historian of the future, inciting an attempted coup because you've just lost an election that you continue to lie about. By the way, he's here on a state visit this week. That's pretty bad. But when you pardon the people who've done it, you are telling them that violence is okay. Not only are you telling them that violence is okay, you're telling them that violence is good. Violence is to be encouraged. If you don't think you're getting your own way, then attack, attack, attack. Fight. I don't want to start sounding like Penny Mordaunt, who was categorically and indubitably being metaphorical when she used that sort of language on the Conservative conference stage. But that, to me, was a huge moment. And I wonder whether those salutes that Elon Musk gave that time, I wonder whether historians of the future will look at those and go, duh, what did you expect to happen when you let that one slide, or you both sized that, or you claim that wasn't quite as significant a moment as everybody else was saying it was? 0345 60973. What's he talking about? And what should Keir Starmer do? Robert is in Gateshead. Robert, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. Nice to speak to you.
Likewise.
What Elon Musk did on Saturday was almost verbatim repeats Donald Trump's words on January the 6th.
Is it?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it is.
You've got to fight like hell. You've got to fight like hell. I'm going to go down there with you, but he didn't. But you've got to need a billionaire from another country trying to overthrow our government. That's plain and simple. That's what he's doing.
It is plain and simple. It really is plain and simple. I mean, I sometimes wonder whether overthinking things and overcomplicating things makes everything worse. He is literally saying you've got to get rid of your government, your democratically 18-month-old government with a decent majority, albeit low approval ratings. That is how democracy works.
He wants the dissolution of Parliament.
And he lied.
That's what he asked for.
And he jumped into bed with a man who lost an election, lied about it, and then launched an attempted... It's important to remind yourself, Robert. Thank you for reminding me of the words that Trump used on that day, because you can disappear, can't you, into a swamp of contemplation and thinking.
People are watching the same thing and taking different things away from it. Yeah. That's what you keep saying.
Yeah, you're right. But there's only one thing you can take away from this. His concern for democracy and government mandates is such that he jumped straight into bed with a bloke who lied about losing an election and contributed to a violent coup designed to overthrow the actual legitimate legal result. There's his concern for democracy in a nutshell.
Is it okay to say that Mr. Musk was having difficulty stringing a few words together on Saturday?
Well, it could have been the nerves, the scale of the occasion, or it could have been the intricacies of Tommy Robinson's, Stephen Yaxley Lennon's interviewing style. We can speculate until the cows come home. But what I want you to speculate on next is what Keir Starmer should be doing in this position, in this moment. They've got to get on the platform and say this is wrong. Even though Trump's coming on Tuesday, Keir Starmer's got to say this is wrong. You've got your people in your country interfering in our politics. Stop it. Yeah, just butt out. Can we think of any precedents? I mean, I remember when Barack Obama was here in the run-up to the referendum and he told us a few simple truths about what the relationship between the two countries would be in the immediate aftermath of a vote to leave. And he did so from a place of concern, diplomacy and decency. Nigel Farage had an embolism, but he seems to have suddenly become supremely comfortable about foreign politicians interfering in our politics. But can you think of a major figure of what they like to call leftists who's ever called for the violent overthrow of a democratically elected British government?
Well, the right wing's telling you that they are the ones that's doing all this violence. I know. We can't help it.
The phone lines are open. When was the last time a, quote, leftist, end quotes, with enormous power, reach and influence called for the violent overthrow of a democratically elected British government? Hey, when was the last time a, quotes, leftist, end quotes, with enormous power and platform and influence called for the violent overthrow of a democratically elected US government? Because that is exactly what we saw unfolding on January the 6th. And spoiler alert, it wasn't incited by college professors, journalists, or leftists. It's mad, right? It's absolutely bonkers. And you keep thinking, or I do, at least, of that line that probably is apocryphal, but certainly speaks to an inalienable truth, is that the thing you do, if you're embarked upon really awful, awful paths, the thing you do is just tell your supporters that the other lot, the people that you're inciting them to be violent against, are actually doing all of the things that you're doing. I sometimes think, how can people be so daft? How can people be so stupid? Look over there's some terrible people, as yet unidentified and unspecified, and they're doing really, really terrible things that we're actually doing. But hey-ho, luckily you've been so successfully distracted that you're not going to pick up on the hypocrisy. There it is. So, calling for the violent overthrow of a democratically elected government on either side of the Atlantic, the United Kingdom or the United States. When is the last time a leftist did that? And yet they're the ones who are apparently dedicated to political violence and coming to get you.
James O'Brien on LBC.
10:49 is the time. I'll read this from Ed in Croydon because I think it's helpful. And I think you raise a perfectly valid point, Ed. He says, I don't quite follow the left-right debate. Is it racist to want to control the population and bring it down to previous levels? We should also look at our own population to be more productive. The care sector should also be promoted so that we look after our own ageing population and don't rely on immigration for this. For me, less is more generally, and being less tolerant of job avoidance is part of the answer. That, I mean, I disagree with some of that, but I'm not to the point of taking up arms or cudgels. The point that we're addressing today, Ed, and no, of course, none of that is racist. Although I think that in the foothills of racism, particularly that we should train our own, I do find myself wondering how the doctors who treated you last time you were in hospital would feel about that argument if they were not technically part of that category, Ed. It just seems like quite a rude thing to say to somebody who has dedicated their professional life to caring for people born in this country, even though they weren't, that we wish we hadn't had to put up with your ministrations. I wish someone had actually taken your place at medical school, or somebody had trained themselves to do this job who didn't look like you or who didn't come from wherever it is you come from. But again, I'd leave you to decide whether or not that's racist. The point is, you can say all that. This might be. I just don't know if there's a phone in it. What is it that you're not allowed to say? What is the free speech that's under threat? It's such a weird argument. And you surely can probably come up with a couple of examples that you find difficult or puzzling. But and they may often involve the abuse or the criticism or just simply the critique of transgender people. But the idea that you can't say anything, the idea that your freedom of speech is so under threat that we now need to bend the knee to a foreign billionaire and call for the overthrow of our own government while following his call for violence on our own streets? Have we all gone mad? I tell you what, we hear a lot of chunder about British values. Has there ever been anything more at odds with British values than this sort of insanity? I'm under threat, I'm frightened, I'm this, that, I'm here in front of 150,000 people to complain that I can't get my message out there, I'm being censored. That's the point that Peter Kyle, in his, to my mind, somewhat cack-handed and inadequate fashion, was trying to make on the telly yesterday. It is palpably absurd to claim that your free speech is under threat while you've been free to march in your tens of thousands through the capital city. A capital city, incidentally, that is an absolute beacon of diversity or decency or multiculturalism or whatever it is that you want to call it. And a capital city that is routinely maligned by people who never and do not live here. It's quite extraordinary how Elon Musk's platform, through manipulations and algorithms and the amplification of clips and whatnots, has somehow contributed to the idea that my hometown is a hellhole. I just count the murder rates. Have a look at every city in America. In fact, just focus on the Republican ones, if you want to get political about it. How dare you? How dare you tell other people that my house is horrible when I know that it isn't because I live there? Who the hell are you? But he's selling something that people want. And what is it that he's selling? 0345 6060 973. What is he selling that people want? It used to be cars. Hassan is in Palmer's Green. Hassan, what would you like to say?
Hey, James, how are you? I'm a long-time occasional listener.
Thank you.
You know, life gets in the way.
Yeah, I'll accept that for now, but I'm good. Go on.
Well, actually, you depress us by us, me and my wife, because you kind of, we'll listen to you, you hold up the mirror to the state of the UK ever since the Brexit debate, and kind of, you know...
It's not always a happy listen. It's not always... No, I hear you. I take that. It's a daily grind for me to walk the tightrope, Hassan. But go on, what made you pick up the phone finally?
So I actually grew up in the Balkans, and I survived, you know, the war there, and I'm a keen student of history, especially kind of the Second World War. This, to me, has very familiar echoes, and I really don't like it. I think, you know, Elon Musk and everything that he said, I think the violence is coming. I mean, we had violence last year, didn't we? And I think that Keir Starmer dealt with it fairly well. In terms of how he should deal with it, I think that he's an excellent legal mind. But I think given everything that's going on, we need someone who is ready to get down and dirty with these right-wing populists, call them whatever you want. Because on the one hand, we need to ridicule them for what they are and not take the moral high ground, especially because I know a lot of ordinary people who are what you might call floating voters or centrists, who are now saying, well, there is, too much migration, we need to stop the boat. So all you need is, for good men to do nothing, the quote says. And, you just need a lunatic or violent, call it whatever you want, fringe, to, kind of the stormtroopers to actually cause violence. The only thing that gives me a bit of cause, for optimism is that we have fairly robust gun laws in this country. Otherwise, I don't know how things would end up, because this is just dehumanization. Right now, it's people coming in on the boats, the migrants. Tomorrow it's going to be black people, Muslims, the Jews. That's how these things always end. And I just fear that violence, when Elon Musk talks about violence, I just fear that it is planned. And I just hope that our security services, and I expect them to be across their brief, but I just think that what happened at the weekend was a dry run for something bigger. Unfortunately, I hope you're wrong.
I hope you're wrong, and I don't want anybody to panic. But look what happened on January the 6th, and look what Elon Musk's response was to Donald Trump after that event.
Well, look what happened with the attempts to set, hotels with asylum seekers on fire. Imagine if those people had guns, God forbid.
And also, some people, even in what you might call traditional media, have, of course, turned the woman who called for those pogroms, or who incited pogroms, into some sort of folk hero, invited her onto stage at Nigel Farage's party conference. Do you want to hear something funny?
It's almost like a marathon.
Do you want to hear something funny? Shall I read you a question that Stephen Yaxley-Lennon asked the owner of Twitter on stage on Saturday? Are you ready?
Please do.
Okay. Do you believe, he said, that there are powerful forces outside of elected officials, someone controlling governments, that are trying to control the flow of information? He asked the owner of X whether he believes that there might be people out there trying to control the flow of information. Irony just died.
Yeah, and this is clearly kind of a nod to that, trope about globalists, which is actually anti-Semitism, right? As we know, clearly. So I don't know. And we also have a fairly, good kind of comedy scene in the UK. We just need people to start mocking these people. Because
I hope you're right. I do hope you're right. A, it always helps. Everybody needs a giggle. And B, there is no effective pin with which to prick pomposity, particularly prejudiced pomposity, than a little bit of satire. So we'll start there. Imagine asking the bloke who literally owns Twitter and has turned it into a cesspool of far-right rhetoric, whether or not he believes, and you've got to do it in really scary. You've got to, do you possibly think, owner of Twitter, that someone who's not elected might be trying to control the flow of information? And then the owner of Twitter strokes his chin, and let's find out what he actually says. The owner of Twitter strokes his chin when asked about the flow of information, and he says, I think when you look at the behaviour of organisations, you have to say, what is the incentive for these organisations? So, Mr. Owner of Twitter, do you think people are possibly trying to control the flow of information for the people? Yes, I do. And you have to ask yourself, what could their incentive possibly be? Am I going nuts, or is that the stupidest stroke funniest thing you've heard all week? It's only 11 o'clock on Monday, so the bar is low. I'm going to interview the owner of Twitter, and I'm going to ask him whether he's worried about people trying to control the flow of information. Are you worried about unelected people trying to control Why did you buy Twitter, mate? And you thought I was exaggerating when I said you tell them that other people are doing the thing that you do. I didn't think I was going to get the best example imaginable in the space of 10 minutes after making that observation. You're interviewing the owner of Twitter, and you're clutching your pearls and pretending that your knees are knocking, and you're asking whether unelected people are trying to control the flow of information. And then the owner of Twitter responds by going, yes, I think when you look at the behaviour of organisations or people, you have to say, what is the incentive for these organisations? All right. Moneypenny, take a memo. Elon Musk bought Twitter in order to control the flow of information. I think he's even said so. I think when you look at the behaviour of people like that, you have to say, what is the incentive for him?
James O'Brien on LBC.
Just while we're wallowing in the madness of it all, and what a timely reminder from Hassan that although I don't know if you're familiar with the Peter Cook quote about 1930s Germany, I'll remind you of it shortly, but how timely of Hassan to remind us of the importance of pointing and laughing, and there can't be many better opportunities to point and laugh than asking the owner of Twitter what he feels about unelected people trying to influence populations and what on earth we can do to stop it. Yeah, I got a few ideas. But while we are wallowing in the madness of the moment, may I remind you that our Prime Minister is currently hoping that a state visit from a close friend of Jeffrey Epstein will dial down the continuing furore surrounding the Prime Minister's decision to promote a close friend of Jeffrey Epstein. That's not even a criticism of Keir Starmer, although I have got plenty of those. And I don't think that ship is going to be turning around anytime soon, sadly. Because God knows what the alternatives are, but you can't stop telling the truth about what is happening just because you are a little bit worried about what might happen as an alternative. But that's just true. The UK Prime Minister is hoping that a state visit from a close friend of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein will dial down the furore surrounding the Prime Minister's decision to promote a close friend of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Welcome to Brexit Britain. I'm not even sure he's got much choice. I don't know that you could call off the dogs on that particular path of pragmatism or expediency or trying to keep the mango Mussolini sweet, however you want to phrase it. And that brings us back to Elon Musk and the extraordinary scenario in which we find ourselves. And I mentioned Brexit Britain advisedly because we're supposed to hate foreign interference in British politics, right? Nigel Farage in particular has written reams, given speeches galore about how foreigners should butt out of British politics. And yet he thinks that it's perfectly reasonable for him as a serving member of the UK Parliament to go to a congressional hearing and describe the United Kingdom as North Korea. So we're back to the things that you're not allowed to say. Let me read you a couple of texts. And Paul's been in touch. He says he was referring to the need for UK patriots to stand up for our culture, which is being eradicated. And again, I'd be like, what do you mean, mate? I'm from the UK, and I am what you would loosely describe as patriotic, as in there are things that I had absolutely nothing to do with that were undertaken by men and women who happen to have been born under the same geographical happenstance that I was born under, and for reasons that I can't fully explain, I feel a degree of kinship with them and pride in what they achieved. So whether it were William Shakespeare, Charles Dickens or Winston Churchill, let me try and think of something a little more up to date, if I can. How about Harry Kane? I take enormous pride in what people born under the same star as me have done throughout the ages, and I call that patriotism. I don't know what's been eradicated there. What's being eradicated, Paul? Don't ask me questions like that when I am feeling my anger, thinks Paul, course through my veins like a thrill. Don't take away my anger, or don't make me feel silly for feeling that anger, because when I say our culture is being eradicated, what I really mean is there's a brown fella over there, and I don't like him. And this one goes even further. I should apologise in advance to Lewis Goodall, who I think he is referring to here. There's always, and I say this advisedly, I do find with a particular kind of racist an obsession with, how can I put this politely? Other men's bottoms. I just take my word for it, crops up a lot in my inbox, all right? And here's Martin in Wolverhampton. Ha-ha, he writes, O'Brien and his fellow far-left crew, including Goodall, their backsides are twitching as they become irrelevant, as the silent majority are awake to their and the MSM lies, and we know the truth, and the million-plus people who were in London, and the millions who watched online know and aren't listening to your anti-British rhetoric, says Martin. In a note to a radio programme that he's currently listening to. And far-left ideology, we have had enough of it, and there's a storm brewing, and the patriotic British people are the storm. There's that word again. So you can carry on spouting your lies, as only the radicalised left are listening to it, says Martin, who's listening to it. You are the racists against the British people, says Martin in Wolverhampton. So what's he not allowed to say? And why the thing about bottoms? Always the bottoms, Martin. What's that about, mate? Twitching bottoms. It's just a bit weird, isn't it? But anyway, what you're not allowed to say, give us a call. Go on, 034. Even I know you're not actually listening to this leftist bilge because only the far left would be listening. But let's pretend you are. You didn't just send me a random text and hit the wrong number when you press send. Give us a call. Tell us what it is that you're not allowed to say. 0345 6060973. What should Keir Starmer be doing? Oh, okay, no, let's do it the other way round. Let's take that question that Tommy Ten Names asked Elon Musk at the weekend, and let's imagine what the answer would be. Why would somebody unelected try to control the information, the flow of information to the British public? Why would he have done that? Why would Elon Musk have done that? What does he want? 0345 6060973. And what should Keir Starmer do? Right, I know I've asked that, but I want to move more into that territory now. What should Keir Starmer do? And with regard to the platform, not just the man. Ed Davey has shown some backbone, not for the first time, and hopefully not for the last time. Ed Davey has done some real, what's the word that I want? Real work on this, and has said what I would have expected two major party leaders like Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer to have done. I think, has Badenoch been completely silent? There's your first call to Ian Dale's exciting new project. Give Kemi Badenoch a ring and ask her why she hasn't condemned Elon Musk for calling for violence on the streets of the UK. 0345 6060973 is the number you need then and now. I hope Ian will do a little bit of marketing for me tonight. It's outrageous that I'm doing it for him on this occasion, but seriously, ring in, ask Kemi Badenoch why she hasn't, if she hasn't, if I've missed it, condemn this, or indeed why she thinks that unelected people should be trying to control the flow of information to the British people. But the platform remains huge and the UK government remains on it. Surprisingly easy to walk away, even if you've got well over 1 million followers, I found, although not until I actually did it. And there are times that I miss it. Or at least there are times that I miss what it used to be before Elon Musk bought it in order to control the flow of information. What should the government do? I don't see how the government can stay on it after the owner, a man who's not only monetised the hatred on there for the disseminators of hate, but also now called for violence on the streets of the United Kingdom. I don't see how the United Kingdom can stay on Twitter. I don't think this is a niche phone-in now. I think it probably was last week when I thought about having it. But now that the owner has stood up, or essentially stood up in public, and called for violence on our streets and denigrated our sovereign country in the most hideous and offensive of ways, once the owner of Twitter has essentially called for the democratically elected Prime Minister of these islands to be deposed, quite possibly in a violent fashion, or by the means of what he calls revolution, then how can the government he leads remain on that platform? So just take a moment, because I don't want this to be a silly question. And you might be sitting there thinking, "I'll give your head a wobble, James. It's just Twitter." That probably means you haven't been there much. God knows what it's like now. But even before I left, it was hideous. But you know, as a public figure or a blue tick or a prominent liberal, that you're probably the victim of algorithm manipulation. And in the same way that my feed was being filled with absolutely hideous racism, I presume that people who like racism were getting lots of clips of me, because it's about enraging and angering. And you know, I am going to be really, really annoying to somebody like Paul, who thinks that we need to stand up for our culture, which is being eradicated, but wouldn't be able to provide a single example of what that is. And then, you know, someone like Martin in Wolverhampton, who's obsessed with my bottom, is going to absolutely hate it when I pop up in his feed. So that's what's being done to it. It's two-way traffic. You either walk away from the thing that is designed to enrage and offend you, or you get really enraged and offended and you start writing to radio stations about the presenter's bottom. I hope you're well, Martin. And that is the question, really. Can the government stay on it, or does that sound trivial? Does that sound silly? Chris in York asked, did you really have 1 million followers, James, or was it just 110,000? 0345 6060973 is the number you need. So tell me what you think Keir Starmer should be doing about Musk in particular, and about the platform in general. Mandy's in Stevenage. Mandy, what would you like to say?
Yeah, take it easy with me. It's my first time phoning in.
All right.
Keir Starmer, I think he needs to do something with his platform. That's the first thing. He is the Prime Minister of this country, and I think what he has done, he's almost disappeared, and those voices that are shouting louder are the ones that are being listened to. It's crazy to me that we've got a Prime Minister that is seeing what is happening in Britain right now, and he is not on every single platform, every single show. The Labour Party should be... I've always been a Labour voter, not sure that I will be again. He just doesn't seem the man for the job. He seems like he hasn't got a backbone. He's trying to appease every single... Nigel Farage says jump, he says how high.
Yeah.
I'll do a bit of this to please him. All right, let me give Trump some sweets and say, come here, let me please you. He's not standing for anything and he's falling for everything. And I think even his cabinet are getting, I can't swear, but, you know, with him at the moment, because I just think he is not, sadly, after so long praying that he gets in, is not the man for the job. I would be saying that Jeremy Corbyn should be there, if you ask me. I think someone who is going to stand up, regardless, in the face of adversity, and kind of just take his platform, saturate. He's allowing the far right to saturate the media. Every single channel is saturated by them.
He can't stop that bit of it, because the media chooses what it's going to put on. I mean, Ed Davey has really...
Be more visible. He could be more visible.
He could be more visible. Ed Davey has led the line against what Musk did in town on Saturday, and it's not got... I don't think I saw it in a newspaper this morning, just to give you an idea of what the media are up to as we speak. Do you know, you almost stumbled into the phone-in that we nearly had. We're probably going to have it later this week. Is that I spent the weekend, when I found my thoughts turning to politics and not towards wanting to curse the very name of the man that invented IKEA. Why did Keir Starmer want to be Prime Minister?
Mm-hmm. He doesn't have it in him.
Why did he want it in the first place? Obviously, I'm not a member of the Jeremy Corbyn fan club, and I think it's time he gave someone else a chance. But I understand your position. It's perfectly reasonable. What is a little odd, if I were to draw comparisons between the two leaders, is that when you realise that the fellow that you thought was good isn't good, the trick is to move on to someone new, not to either... insist that he was good all along and it's just the consequence of a scam that he didn't get to be Prime Minister, or let's give him yet another bite of the cherry. But we'll have that conversation another time. What should he do directly about the Musk-Twitter dichotomy today?
I think he needs to come out and he needs to condemn what was said on that stage. He needs to... I think looking at the people, he's seeing votes. He's thinking, I don't want to... None of them people are going to vote for him anyway. None of them. So I think he just needs to come out, condemn it, and plead to the better nation of Britain, because there is one. We're just not hearing it. We're just not hearing it. And I think that he needs to come out and condemn that. And also, how we're going to be now spending taxpayers' money on Trump and really give it... it doesn't make any sense to me.
That's the one bit I can make sense of, actually.
I'm glad you can.
Well, I mean, in the context of trade, in the context of keeping him sweet, there's even a Brexit argument here that we are paying slightly less in ridiculous tariffs than the rest of the European, or what remains in the European Union are paying. And I mean, I would use the word appeasement probably, but I'm not quite sure that it would have been wise up until this point or the next point or the point after that not to appease the man who is the most powerful on the planet, not to appease the most powerful man on the planet. I don't know what the alternative is. I really don't.
I think our morals have been sold down the river, though, to be fair.
Politicians can only do morals when they can afford it, Mandy. And you and I might not like that. And there are a few politicians who, forgive me, who like to pretend that that's not true, but it just is true. You can't feed your family with morals.
No, but I do think that he needs to take his platform and he needs to do more with it, or he needs to step aside. And I'm looking at the front, but I don't know who. No. But it just can't be.
What about
him.
just doing simply now, coming off Twitter completely? The UK government will no longer treat Twitter as a valid platform for our business. Would that be a good thing or a bad thing to do?
I think that would be a good thing. I think.
What about the idea that you lose immediate access to millions of users and millions of citizens, millions of voters?
I think. I mean, I don't know if people. I don't know. I can't be doing with Twitter anymore because it's like you were saying about the algorithms. It's just. So I'm not on it.
Someone should ask Elon Musk why anybody who's not elected would want to control the flow of information to the public. But I don't know that I'll ever get the chance to do that. I mean that, actually. Thank you, because you've finessed that question, so we can put it on the board now. Beautiful call, Mandy. Thank you. I don't know what you were nervous about. Sounded like you've been doing it all your life. Would it be actually a bit childish to take the UK government off Twitter, or would it be an absolutely essential move? And in fact, you might not like it, but it's true what I just said about the relationship between principle and politics. Would it be an example of prioritising principle over pragmatism, and it would actually be to the detriment of the government or the country? Should Keir Starmer announce today, that's it, we're not going to be on this stupid platform anymore because the bloke that owns it is a menace. 0345 6060 973. I want your answers to that very specific question. And I've got some breaking news for you. A weird Tory MP has joined Nigel Farage's outfit. Stop the clocks and hold the front pages. The UK media is about to pretend that this is a moment of epic significance. And don't cheat, all right? A really weird Tory has joined Farage's outfit. Don't cheat. It's not a news bulletin now, so there won't be any clues. Text me who you think it is. And it'll be really interesting to see, A, if you've ever heard of the person that actually is, and B, whether or not you consider them to be the weirdest out of the current crop of weird Tories. We'll find out after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
21 minutes after 11. Is it honest, Bob James? Asks Carenza. Toby Young or Desmond Swain, says Kathy. Sir John Hayes is my guess. Michael Fabricant. Gosh, there's 4 Michael Fabricants in a row. That's remarkable. Which weird Tory has just defected to Nigel Farage's latest wheeze? 2 more Fabricants. The ghost of Margaret Thatcher. Rees Mogg getting a few late votes coming in for Rees Mogg. Andrew Rosindell has always been a bit weird, James. Could it be him? Fabricant. Mark Francois. Freddie Krueger. Michael Fabricant, Mark Francois, George Useless. There's quite a few. There's loads of votes coming in, and some of them are actually correct. Somebody called Danny Kruger, who you may be aware of. He's a great big Christian. He's one of those massive Christians, really big Christian. It's all about, caring for your neighbour and looking after others. People with push notifications are banned from my quizzes, by the way, because there's no way that anyone would have reached for that name first. That's how I cheat. It's Liz Truss, Mark Garnier. And is it the bloke from Elm Street? Good Lord, my inbox has gone bonkers. So no, it is Conservative MP Danny Kruger. Is he Prue Leith's son? I think he's Prue Leith's... There you go, I do know something. He's Prue Leith's son, and he's one of those Christians that is always demonstrating the most Christian of values, really caring for everybody equally, just as Jesus taught. And he's just joined Nigel Farage's political party. 23 minutes after 11 is the time. What should Keir Starmer do about Elon Musk? And if you're going to answer nothing, you're just as welcome on the programme as anybody who's going to answer lots and lots, but mostly this. Al's in Glasgow. Al, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi. God, you have so many questions.
Well, you can just pick... Look, answer whichever one you want, or none of them. Just invent your own question and answer that if you want, Al. It's that kind of show. Okay. You don't have to be crazy to work here, but it helps.
Okay, I'll go in reverse order.
Go on.
Right, with Twitter, you can't ban it.
No, you can't ban Twitter, but should he come off? Well, you can actually ban Twitter. I think they tried that in Brazil, didn't they, or somewhere like that?
Yeah, I think they did, but I don't know if that got a good reaction. That's the only thing.
Okay.
Partly because I think businesses rely on it.
Yes, that's very true. To be fair, I know I said you could answer your own question. You didn't have to confine yourselves to the 17 that I've already asked. I didn't actually ask that question. I haven't suggested banning Twitter as an option. I just wondered whether Starmer should pull the UK government off it completely.
Yes, I think they should.
I think I do too, until the next caller comes on and sounds as persuasive as you in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really communicate using basically a fascist platform. And I think as far as other people are concerned, you can't compel other people to come off it, but you can encourage them not to. But I think there are other systems I would really be worried about, which the government can control and that's things like Palantir. I think they're more insidious because they are they're systems that the government contracts into.
And you're worried about data protection, and I mean, it's another question that I think for our purposes today, this isn't really the focus of our conversation, but I don't want to sound dismissive. It's another focus of when little Tommy 10 Names asked Musk about people, why would people want to control the flow of information? Then the answer to that might include people like Peter Thiel and Palantir and organisations like that, because there are a lot of fears, and I suspect you understand more about this than I do, that the data that these organisations may get their hands on as a consequence of handling massive government contracts could be a heck of a lot more valuable than any governments realise.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other topic, because, I mean, that's going big corporations.
It is, and it's one that we have talked about and will talk about again, and one that our friend Carol Cadwallader has been tireless, indefatigable and courageous in her coverage of. But why would, given what you said about banning Twitter and it being bad news for all the businesses that are on there, why would the government pulling out not be similarly injurious?
Well, I just think the government has a choice about how to sell itself and how to communicate.
Yes.
And I think you don't use a platform that stokes division and, bigotry and that sort of thing. I mean, I think Starmer does get it as far as... I think he does. The reason I say that is because I think that... he does get the threat from Ukraine, for example. So I think he does understand threat. And I think that solving this is partly about detail and how things work. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is actually
working on it.
Getting involved. Yeah, working.
Well, I hope you're right. You're more optimistic than I am. You also, I think you might have the same croaky throat condition that I've got this morning. I thought I'd recovered from last week's lurgy, but I guess it's just not normal to speak as much as I speak. Until you're 10 minutes into your first monologue of the day, you don't realise that you're still struggling. Let me read you this. Thank you, Al. I want more on I know it's a little bit of a geeky question, but a lot of people are calling for it, and I wonder whether they are missing something or whether Keir Starmer is missing a golden opportunity to show a little bit of leadership that is cost-free. We can't possibly endorse, promote or normalise this platform because the owner of it is literally fomenting violence on the streets of this country. At least I presume he is. Starmer might have to add. Because he has said violence is coming and you need to fight. Read this or listen to this from Ed Davey. Dear Prime Minister, the attempts this weekend by Elon Musk to sow discord and incite violence on our streets represent a serious and dangerous interference in our democracy. Speaking at the Unite the Kingdom march organised by far-right hate preacher Tommy Robinson, Musk told the crowd that violence is coming and that you either fight back or you die. The United Kingdom has always prided itself on resolving disagreements through debate. There you go, Paul. That's a British tradition. Who's eroding that? Through the ballot box. There you go, mate. That's another British tradition, a fine standard of democracy. Who's eroding that? And through the rule of law. There you go, mate. There's another fine British tradition, even a British value, you might say. I wonder who is eroding that, and why aren't you fighting back against them? In fact, if you had to pick three things that were indicative of our culture, those three things would be pretty good. Resolving disagreements through debate, through the ballot box, and through the rule of law. But hey-ho, you've got other ideas about what our culture is and what is being eroded. The recent conduct of Elon Musk, deliberately spreading misinformation, stoking anger, and encouraging violence, represents a reckless and dangerous assault on those values. This attempt to endanger public safety and meddle in our politics must be met with clarity and resolve. And Ed Davey has sent this to Keir Starmer, to Kemi Badenoch, and indeed to Nigel Farage. At times like this, it is vital that the people of our country see their leaders united. That is why I am writing to urge each of you to put party politics aside and join me in publicly condemning these dangerous remarks, and to jointly consider what sanctions Elon Musk should face as a consequence. We must make clear that no individual, however wealthy or powerful, can get away with using their platform to inflame tensions and incite violence. At the same time, we must uphold freedom of speech and the right to peaceful protest without fear of violence, intimidation, or manipulation from abroad. I think that's relevant as well, as a patriot, of course. Intimidation and interference from abroad. How unpatriotic is that? Yeah. The strength of Britain lies in our shared commitment to mutual respect, decency and the rule of law. There's more of those British values again. Who's eroding them? If we fail to speak with one voice now, we risk emboldening those who want to threaten these values and undermine our democracy. I hope you'll join me in making this important stand. So that argument about doing the really bad stuff and claiming that the other people are doing it. So you know, the people who write to me who say UK patriots need to stand up for our culture, which is being eradicated, are actually being amped up and hyped up and stoked up and incited by people who are genuinely seeking to undermine democracy, peaceful protest, opposition to violence on our streets, the rule of law. They are literally seeking to undermine all of these things while claiming that some unidentified enemy, loosely described as, quotes, leftist, end quotes, is the real culprit. It would be funny if it wasn't so apparently effective. Thomas Watts is here now with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:33. You are listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where we turn our attention, or we have turned our attention, to the owner of Twitter, Elon Musk, and his appearance this weekend at the rally, march, huge march, more numbers, I think, than anyone was expecting, organised by the serial criminal Tommy Robinson, a.k.a. of course Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who is also now conducting interviews, including with Elon Musk, asking why he thinks that unelected people should be seeking to control the flow of information to a population like ours. But of course he didn't seem to spot the fact that he was speaking to the person who has spent more money than anybody else alive to seek to control the flow of information to a population like ours. I think that he was last here in November of 2023, so I have to presume, was that when Rishi Sunak rolled out the red carpet for him and conducted that ridiculous interview? That possibly explains why Kemi Badenoch hasn't condemned him. But, I mean, you've probably heard this bit, but there's a lot more.
And the message is really, my message is to the reasonable centre. The common sense. So my appeal is to British common sense, which is to look carefully around you and say, if this continues, what world will you be living in? This is a message to the reasonable centre, the people who ordinarily wouldn't get involved in politics. Who just want to live their lives. They don't want. They're quiet. They just go about their business. My message is to them: if this continues, that violence is going to come to you. You will have no choice. You're in a fundamental situation here where whether you choose violence or not, violence is coming to you. You either fight back or you die. You either fight back or you die. And that's the truth.
Okay. I guess I'm still wondering what you think the Prime Minister should be doing about this. And of course, he is telling people to attack, presumably, people they disagree with politically, which makes the next clip possibly, arguably, maybe no one was meant to scrutinise this stuff. You know, they just wait to see what the crowd cheer and then double down on that. But this is quite interesting on the question of, I don't know, values or equality, freedom, whatever the opposite of discrimination may be.
I'm appealing to sort of common sense and fairness. I want to emphasize just common sense and fairness, which is that we should make our decisions based on merit, on how, if somebody is talented and hardworking, then that should be the only means of advancement. There should not be discrimination on the basis of sex or religion or any race or anything else. And what a lot of the woke stuff is, it's actually super racist, it's super sexist, and it's often it's anti-religion, but only anti-Christian. like, why only anti-Christian? That's unfair. So this is why, again, my message is to the reasonable middle. Do you not want a world where there is fairness and common sense, and you advance as a function of how hard you work and your talent and your integrity? That should be all that matters. And the woke mind virus that I call it is against all of that.
I don't want to engender any sympathy for the fella, but he's not very good at it, is he? And that must kill him. All that money, and he's just a little bit rubbish at this stuff. Even little Tommy Ten Names is probably better at whipping up a crowd. He doesn't seem to have much focus on the sort of contents of his contributions, but he's just not very good at it. He knows what words to say. Christian, anti-Christian. The Pope's had a swing at him today. I mean, I don't know what your relationship is between the understanding of Christianity and the role that the Pope plays in that religion on this planet, but he's condemned the huge salaries of people like Elon Musk as a major concern for the future of our species, let alone in the short term, which is an interesting intervention. Is that anti-Christian from the Pope? Seems unlikely, but he knows that, and you're supposed to say woke. A lot of the woke stuff is super racist, it's super sexist. Examples, please? And why can you only be anti-Christian? There's almost a poignancy in the pauses where presumably he's either lost his thread again or he's waiting for applause that never really comes, except when he calls for violence. I do like the answer to the question he was asked about. So you think this is an exaggeration. He really was asked about powerful forces outside of elected officials controlling governments and trying to control the flow of information. Off the top of your head, in a conversation with the bloke that bought Twitter because he thought it was too woke, can you think of anybody that has tried to control the flow of information to a population? I'm just trying to think, who's the bloke that I'm talking... Anyway, here's his answer to that.
I think when you look at the behavior of organizations or people, you have to say, what is the incentive for these organizations? And frankly, there's a massive incentive on the left to import voters. So if they can't convince their nation to vote for them, they're going to import people from other nations to vote for them. This is a massive factor. And frankly, it's a strategy that will succeed if it is not stopped. Thus far, it is succeeding. And you see strong movements to allow people who are not from Britain to vote in Britain, to allow people who are not from France or elsewhere to vote in those countries, and thus depriving the citizens of their democratic power. It's really a voter importation thing, and if they're allowed to succeed, if this is allowed to continue, they will succeed in importing voters, swaying the elections, and taking your vote away from you. That is 100% what is happening.
So is he against foreigners interfering in UK democracy? Or is he in favour of foreigners interfering in... Oh, well, I mean, I say foreigner. I'm speaking about this great champion of meritocracy who inherited an emerald mine. But I, like him, believe that you should advance in this world according entirely only to your own talents, and there should be no... I mean, essentially, he's calling for a 100% inheritance tax on everybody on the planet so that we all start from scratch the minute that we turn up in our short trousers at primary school. Do you think he's thought any of this through? So you're a taxpayer in this country, you happen to have been born elsewhere, you can't be what they like to call an illegal, because if you're an illegal, you won't be on the electoral register, or indeed paying income tax. So you're a fully functioning citizen of this country, and you shouldn't have a vote, but you're a foreign billionaire who hasn't been here since 2023, and you think you should be able to call for the government to be overthrown with violence while also claiming that our freedom of speech is under threat. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think anybody was supposed to actually scrutinise this stuff. So let's go to the sort of freedom question. The people who are censored, the people who are not allowed to say what they want. Little Tommy Ten Names puts it thusly. A lot of ordinary people that are here today feel ignored, they feel censored, or they're labelled just for speaking up about their legitimate fears and concerns in their communities. Do you believe technology like X or even AI can finally give power back to those people, or do you think it will make censorship worse or even automated? That's actually quite a good question. Let's hear what his answer was to that one?
I mean, that's a complicated question. It really depends on what government is in charge. The government can obviously use whatever powers are available to suppress the people. And so I really think there's got to be a change of government in Britain. And you can't, we don't have another 4 years or whatever the next election is. It's too long. Something's got to be done. There's got to be a dissolution of Parliament and a new vote held. And really what matters is rallying the people of Britain, really getting the people of Britain to get the message out there, talk to your friends and family, and build a massive power base among the people. And like I said, you really got to appeal to the sort of average, the normal people that just want to go about their business, that they're sort of in a village somewhere, they're working, they just want to mind their own business. But you've got to point out to them that if we don't take action, they won't be able to mind their own business because other people are going to come and maraud them. There's genuine risk of rape and murder, and the destruction of the country, and dissolution of the entire way of life. And so, yes, in the normal course of business, if you weren't under a massive attack, then people should go about their business and just live their lives. But unfortunately, if the fight comes to you, you don't have a choice. You have to fight. So you have to rally all of the people of Britain to fight for the future.
Let me ask.
And if this doesn't happen, there won't be a future.
What? Was it the middle of the night in America? Do you think? I mean, listen, give the guy a break. He obviously knows one end of a spreadsheet from the other, otherwise he wouldn't be a mega-rich billionaire. Do you think they just woke him up? Or he wasn't expecting the call, maybe? I don't know. Did you understand any of that? I don't know why he brought Massive Attack into it. What have they done to deserve this? He also played a song by James while we're on the subject of my favourite bands of all time. But James, that was what Robinson did, played a song by the band James, but they've complained, saying that they had no right to do that. I think a penny dropped for me then. It was pretty hard for pennies to drop, given the absolute mince that was coming out of the fella's mouth. But there's a little clue there, as to why he couldn't really answer the question, which was actually quite a good question, about whether or not these technologies make censorship worse or better. If you've got an algorithm that deliberately promotes opinions you like and deliberately silences opinions you don't, then yeah, you can answer your own question. You don't need to ask Elon Musk whether it makes censorship worse or better. It's just, as ever with these sort of questions, about freedom of speech, freedom for me but not for thee. But why bringing the government into it? What is he so scared of? Why is he telling lies about our country? And using maraud as a transitive verb. Why is he doing these things? I think I know. I think it's pretty obvious. I'll tell you after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 11:48. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC, where this is tricky, actually. This didn't really occur to me until we started trying to wade through the word soup that Elon Musk inflicted on those poor souls gathered in London on Saturday. The motivation of the man suspected of murdering Charlie Kirk is still unclear, but one element of it upon which almost everybody honest seems to be agreeing is that any radicalisation that took place, whether it was ideological or political or something rather harder to discern, took place online. Everybody is of the view that he was perennially online. There was a slightly half-hearted attempt to claim that he had been radicalised by politics, by professors, by the politics of professors at college. But he dropped out after less than a term, I think, and was a trainee electrician at the time of this crime. So I don't know that anybody yet, and never say never, would be desperate enough to claim that electricians were hotbeds of leftist brainwashing and woke mind viruses. I mean, it's possible he was radicalised by the person teaching him how to wire a house, but it seems unlikely. I think we can all agree. Listen, it's also impossible that he could be radicalised to the point of murder by an English lecturer. But hey-ho, the right have their positions, and my God, they will stick to them. So the radicalisation, if any, is found to have taken place, and at the moment it's hard to imagine how anyone could have gone down the path he is suspected to have gone down without having had their head turned or their brain boiled by some influences, appears to have taken place online. That's the area upon which everybody agrees. Some of the engravings on the bullets used or not used that were later recovered have nods towards video game language and sort of memes. There is, as Elon Musk's AI bot Grok reported over the weekend, evidence of some far-right influences there. But the point is simple. It's all online. It's all online. So I don't know how complicated this actually is. The desperation of people who depend upon unregulated online activity, who resist furiously any attempt to limit the sort of influences that people can be exposed to, whether it is a form of brainwashing or a form of radicalisation, because it robs them of money. And I made a mistake. It's not just the money they make from running the places. It's the simple fact that the really nasty stuff can be the most profitable. The commoditisation of this stuff, the people sort of benefiting most from spreading this hatred and bile, wherever it's coming from, the people who benefit most from it are the people who own the platforms. Engagement goes, it's not just the advertising that they make, but the algorithm is set up in such a way that they're paying politicians now who are on there, almost all of the right. So what's their worst nightmare, these people? And why would they be so desperate to portray someone who appears, and listen, when the facts change, I changed my mind, someone who appears to have been radicalised online? Why are they all so desperate to pretend that his motivation was anything other than that? And why do they keep talking about freedom when we're incredibly free, freer than we've ever been? What is the real game here being undertaken by a man, in this case, who probably benefits more than anybody else on the planet from the fact that social media is free to spread its poison into every corner of our lives and our children's lives without any sanction, any regulation, any law enforcement, or any repercussion? Well, let's ask him.
Europe in general has to be freer. It's stifled by bureaucracy. I think it's good that Britain left the EU because there's just too much bureaucracy in the EU. But frankly, instead of really going down a path of personal freedom and deregulation and getting rid of these stifling regulations, unfortunately, the British government has pretty much stayed on par with the EU. If not in some ways made the stifling regulation worse. If you have excess government regulation and oppression, you stifle the freedom of people to try new and great ideas. And Britain used to be a country that did amazing things, some of the boldest things on the entire planet. And that is possible in the future. But it can't be done if you've got this massive oppressive bureaucracy and a government that doesn't care about its people. And that has to change. There has to be profound change. And there's not much time left.
Ah, dear. It's as if you've kind of got your I don't know. So imagine it was Butlins on a Saturday night in summer, and you've had the whole shebang working towards your big headline act, and then he sort of shuffles on the stage and vomits. It's just extraordinary how rubbish that is, just as an exercise in oratory. But what's accidentally being given away there is the fact that what he's really terrified of is a government that's got the guts to regulate the online space. It's all about the Online Safety Act, isn't it? Or variations thereof. It's extraordinary, really, to spend all that time trying to work out what he was playing at and then to suddenly realise, and that is, of course, why the man currently suspected, and he looks like very much in the frame for it, of murdering Charlie Kirk. The idea of him being radicalised online in whatever direction he was radicalised in is terrifying to these people, which is only part of the reason why they've all had to put so much effort immediately into claiming that the real forces of influence or the real engines of influence were them over there. Oh, no, them over there. Oh, them over... Just never, ever go close to the one that everybody now seems to agree seems to be the most likely suspect in the question of radicalisation, if that's what the word that you want. There it is. That's it. No more clips, I promise. You'd have thought with all that money he could have afforded a public speaking coach, wouldn't you? Just or at least someone to give him a little bit of a steer on how to whip up a crowd like that. I want you all to send me in your favourite example of deregulation that crowd would most benefit from. Okay, so governmental deregulation, items thereof that the crowd gathered in London on Saturday would most benefit. What do we want? Deregulation. When do we want it? Now, what do you want? Which be a bit like me. I suspect, and I could be wrong, the phone lines are open. When I used to ask Brexiters what law they were most looking forward to not having to obey anymore. Those were the days, eh? Do you remember that? What law? It's all the laws, James. What laws? Well, all of them. Yeah, but just name one. What do you want to be deregulated? I'll wait. Well, I can't wait because the emergency tape will kick in and poor old Sam in Nottingham's been waiting for about 12 hours to get on the programme. You better make it count, Sam. What do you want to say? I can't even remember what question you've rung in to answer. Can you?
There's quite a few that have intertwined now. It's, yeah.
Go on.
Been an interesting
conversation. Fill your boots.
Well, it's really concerning times, James. So Keir Starmer's got a massive challenge in front of him, but frustratingly, he helped create it.
Yes.
I think what he has to do, and what he should have done from the very moment he's voted in, is push back. Now, but the problem is he needs to now push back in a big, bold, visible campaign to call out the falsities of those pushing division and change that rhetoric.
Like Ed Davey has done.
That was a fantastic letter.
Shouldn't be remarkable, should it?
No, but if Keir Starmer had said that publicly, I'd be stood up clapping.
Would you?
Yeah, but the challenge that Keir's got is bigger than that, because it's not like a decade or two ago when a press or a TV campaign would reach everyone. People just aren't engaged with media like that now.
That's very true.
I consider myself very in touch politically and in general with what's going on in the world, and I had no idea there was any sort of march this weekend until after it.
Wow.
I saw the pictures. And that's because my social media echo chamber just feeds me things aligned to my views, of which that march very much isn't.
Yeah.
And Starmer now has to try and reach those people who won't be engaged with the
I see where this is going. Oh, you're clever. So he has to stay on Twitter.
He has to find some solution. I think he's got a moral responsibility not to legitimise X and Musk.
Yes.
But if he does, he closes off that door and lets that hatred grow.
I think that door is closed. I mean, there are a couple of people, and forgive me for making it about me, but a couple of people who say it's wrong to come off because you need to take the fight to them. But since he bought it, you can't.
Absolutely.
I don't think you can anymore. I'm not going to wade through 400 paid blue-tick racist replies to one of my relatively innocuous tweets before I get to the people who may actually be susceptible to evidence and facts. I haven't got the time, let alone the energy or the inclination.
And I think you're right, but that means that Starmer then needs to be twice as big in his other routes, and that's going to be really hard because it's a lot of people.
Fireside chats, TV addresses. Sitting there talking to the population once a month, actually, and picking this stuff off like a radio host, saying this is what they said, and this is the truth, this is what they claim, and this is the truth, and here's the proof, and here's the evidence.
He needs to be on YouTube, he needs to be on Facebook, he needs to be on billboards, he needs to be everywhere, challenging these things that people are just believing, which aren't true. And lots of them come from Musk, and they are lies.
Yeah.
And you can factually evidence the fact that they aren't true, but he hasn't yet, and that really is disappointing.
Isn't it just? It was worth the wait, Sam. I mean, for me, I hope it was for you.
Yeah, cheers.
It's coming up to 12 noon. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Still waiting for any suggestions of what people cheering Elon Musk at they weren't really cheering, but I said a bit about violence, but what people who had Elon Musk inflicted upon them at the weekend, what example of deregulation they would be most excited by, or their lives would be most improved by, their lives would be most enhanced by. As yet, no genuine or serious suggestions, which has got a touch of the deja vus about it. What do you want to do next? I may leave the decision up to you. We could have a look at what the Pope has said about Elon Musk, but I sense that you are close to overdosing upon the billionaire, and I suppose it's technically my job to find something else to discuss.
James O'Brien on LBC.
4 minutes after 12 is the time. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. I was going to sound like such a joker now. I know what I'm asking you this hour, but I didn't know before. You think I exaggerate sometimes how amateurish my approach to this is. In some ways. In other ways, it's incredibly professional. Can you guess what the question I'm about to ask you is? It came up in that news bulletin. Right then. Literally, word for word, the question that I'm about to ask you. Can you guess what it is? I'll tell you in a minute, but I've got another mystery for you. And in order to answer this one, I'm told, you would have had to listen, you needed to have been listening to Ali Miraj's show on LBC yesterday, which of course you were, but just in case you weren't, was it definitely yesterday? But you're not sure it was Ali Miraj? You think it was Ali Miraj? Oh, God, we can't both be amateurs. Oh, okay, so we think... It was definite. The producer was doing her washing and the radio was on in the background, and she thinks it was Ali Miraj's show, but it might not have been. But it was definitely yesterday, and it was definitely LBC. Do you know why it's my fault that Danny Kruger has defected to Reform? Well, it's also my fault that there has been a breakdown in trust of politicians in this country. Do you know why that is? There's a curious trend I've noticed, not so much on my show, but in my inbox, perhaps, the sort of applicants for Idiots Corner, and every now and then on some colleagues' shows, when people ring them to talk about me. There is this sort of desperate attempt to absolve yourself of responsibility for what you've done to this country. If you were a Brexiter, a Boris Johnson fan, an admirer of austerity, perhaps a cheerleader for Liz Truss, any of these things, there's a desperation to pretend. And of course, this is what Nigel Farage grows fat on, politically speaking. It's why Danny Kruger has just joined him. All of these people who brought you Boris Johnson. In fact, Nadine Dorries had quite a lot to say about Danny Kruger, didn't she, in one of her so-called books. All of these people are desperately trying to absolve themselves of responsibility for everything that they've done. They can't attack... they tried to attack Labour, culminating in that wonderful Chris Philp claim that the Labour government is awful because of how many people are in hotels, how many asylum seekers are in hotels, at a time when it was roughly half the number that were in hotels when he was a minister in the Home Office. The honesty disappeared around the corner years ago. But the desperation to absolve themselves of responsibility. It's ironic and somewhat annoying that Farage gets to be the great beneficiary of this, because he also, of course, likes to style himself as one of the great architects of delivering Brexit, which he is. But the fact that it's turned out to be an absolute disaster has somehow allowed him to claim that there is a really good one, but it goes to a different school. So if you're a Tory who is, let us say, morally challenged, you're a morally challenged Tory, then you are going to join Nigel Farage at some point, because the alternative is to take responsibility for what you did to the country, namely Brexit, austerity, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss. Was there a fifth? There's usually a fifth one there. It's not Rishi Sunak. I think in the great scheme of things he was not awful. Was there a fifth one there? So Brexit, Boris Johnson, austerity, Liz Truss. Can't remember. But that's your choice, which is how someone like Danny Kruger can turn around and claim that the Conservative Party is finished. Because, of course, it might be, but the reason why it's finished is because of what people like Danny Kruger have been doing while in it. Namely, Brexit, Boris Johnson, austerity, Liz Truss. Isn't that interesting? Do you want to listen to that clip again? It's been a bit clip-heavy today, and not necessarily with people that you'd want to get stuck in a lift with. But here is Danny Kruger, who you could be forgiven for not knowing about in advance or previously, but he's very well known for being the son of Prue Leith and very Christian. He's a big old Christian, is Danny Kruger. And is he not involved in some of those strange gatherings as well that happen in London where people queue up to... Anyway, here he is speaking today.
But I'm not despondent, because conservatism is not over. It's never been needed more, and actually it's never been more vibrant. Because the failure of the Conservative Party has created space for an alternative. The flame is passing from one torch to another.
He said the Conservative Party is finished, didn't he, at some point? I don't know if he said it in that clip there, but I want to know whether or not you agree That's all. 03456060973. There are some things he represents or believes that, if they have been negotiated in advance, mean that the reform organisation could soon be moving, for example, in a more anti-abortion direction. That's something worth bearing in mind. How that will play out, I do not know. But we've talked a lot. In fact, someone's written an article today about the Labour Party or the Labour movement being finished. There's not going to be anything left soon. Is it time to do that? Is it time? Or are we giving too much credit to this Kruger character? I think we have to ask the question, even though the question has been posed by a cipher, by a pimple upon the buttocks of British politics. Kemi Badenoch is so awful. How much of it is her fault? And how much of it is, well, how much of it speaks to what that chap's just claimed about the Conservative Party being finished in its current form? You've probably given this a little bit of thought before today. You've probably been thinking about it consciously or subconsciously for quite some time now. When you look at the replacement, the great replacement theory, when Nigel Farage's outfit replaces the Conservative outfit, there are two problems with it. Is that if Farage isn't there, the movement isn't there. Such is the nature of the British media's inexplicable reverence for him. But when a shadow minister defects, whichever way you dice it, even if it's from a failing party with a ludicrous leader, that's news. That's political news, and it's very bad news for a party. Is it actually death knell news? Is it correct of him to say that the Conservative Party is finished? 03456060973 is the number you need. Some correct answers. I don't know how many of you were listening to Ali yesterday, but some correct answers to the question of how it's all my fault. Was it Terry in Southgate, I'm told, in fact, was the contributor. I may even let you have a little listen to it if you're very, very good. But this is all my fault, the absolute collapse of UK politics or trust in politicians or whatever it may be. The reason why Danny Kruger has just defected to Nigel Farage's latest outfit, it's all on me. But the question I have for you is whether or not there is any mileage in the suggestion, in the idea that the Tories are over. Because I don't get it on one level. Where are the Tories who aren't mad? So the ones that essentially got shown the door in 2019, when Cummings, who I think, is he related to Danny Kruger by marriage? Dominic Cummings. I think Nadine Dorries said that Danny Kruger was related to Dominic Cummings by marriage, so it's probably something we should double check if she said it. So you've got the disappearance in 2019 of the ones that were prepared to tell the truth. And what did that leave? It left a weird rump that probably have a lot more in common with the weird rump that is Nigel Farage than they do with whatever the Conservative tradition is. Whatever people like that mean when they talk about conservatism. They don't mean the politics of Ken Clark. They don't mean the politics of Ted Heath. They certainly don't mean the politics of Margaret Thatcher, although they think that they do. They just haven't done the studying. They don't mean the politics of, I don't know, John Major. They don't mean the politics even of David Cameron. I don't know what their politics is. What does he even mean when he says conservative? It can't just be racism again, can it? What do they even mean when they say that this is not our politics? But what do you mean when you say the Conservative Party is finished, it's over and done with? Because I'm not sure it is, but I don't know that I can put together a meaningful explanation of why it isn't. So I want both. I want you to tell me why you think it is over, not necessarily in a way that makes sense of or indeed applauds what this Kruger character has elected to do today. And I also want, what I'd really like is someone to have a crack at telling me why, of course, the Conservative Party isn't over. It's the most successful electoral machine in the history of democratic politics. And while it's having a bit of a blip, it's going through a bit of a tough time at the moment, it will be back bigger and better than ever before. Because what you need to remember is that you have a Labour government that is dropping almost every ball. Not all of them, and some of the stuff they've enacted is brilliant, but Keir Starmer isn't even succeeding in getting that message across to the people at the moment. So you have a Labour government that's failing miserably and a Conservative Party that is failing completely to capitalise upon Labour's difficulties. That is unprecedented in UK politics. You have never had in this country a government that is struggling spectacularly and an opposition that is failing completely to capitalise upon the government's difficulties, to the point where they're not even ahead of the government in the polls. So His Majesty's official opposition serves no immediately obvious purpose on the current political pitch. Does that mean that this shadow minister who's now defected is correct when he says the Conservative Party is finished? And I'm going to add a couple of words to that. Forever. It's actually game over. It's done and dusted. There was talk, wasn't there, of this, I think something similar did happen in Canada not long ago. But you think because something has been around forever that it can never actually cease to be. It can never disappear. It can never be so fundamentally diminished or reduced that its very meaning will change and never recover. Is it? Well, I don't want to ask you if it's time to ask that question because I'm asking it. Is it time to say that the Conservative Party in this country is now done and dusted? 0345 6060 973. There's another question you could ask Kemi Badenoch when she starts her monthly phone-in with Ian Dale shortly. Time now is 12:15.
James O'Brien on LBC.
16 is the time. I could have got the question wrong there. Maybe it's why, but of course I do want to hear from people who don't think that the Conservative Party is finished. For the record, I hope it isn't. I think that British politics would be immeasurably damaged if what used to be regarded as the sensible right-wing option is removed from the table and you're left only and exclusively with the insensible. But it is pretty hard to argue with the suspicion. But if you think that it is done, tell me why. Why is the Conservative Party finished? Because, well, irony is not quite the right word. The people who have sunk it, if it's a ship, are now the rats that are leaving it and complaining about how sunk it is. You know, if it was an Amber Rudd or a Dominic Grieve or a David Gauke who were talking about the Conservative Party being finished, you could see where they were coming from because they were victims of the idiocy enacted over the last few years. But for the people who were architects of it to now jump off the sinking ship and swim away shouting, sabotage, sabotage, while hiding their instruments of sabotage in their swimming trunks seems to me to be, frankly, close to funny, but politically quite significant. So, is it true? Robert is in East Grinstead. Robert, you can fill your boots on this one. Where are you coming from?
Hello, James. Hi, I'm coming from a sunny village just outside East Grinstead, and I've been listening to the show, and thank you very much.
Let's do it.
Okay. I don't think that they are finished, the Conservative Party.
They or we?
Just
for the avoidance of doubt. They or we?
Well, I'm going to.
There's no harm in it.
I was saying to your team.
Yes.
This is more like a sort of pub conversation than a radio conversation in some ways.
I hope so. That's what I aim for every day.
Okay. All right. Well, I would sort of do in reverse what I said to her. I think that the Conservative Party are partly in trouble due to simple counting. I think that David Cameron had a mandate. The Conservative Party under David Cameron, his Conservative Party mandate was from 2015 to 2020 via a fully elected Prime Minister in 2017.
Yes.
Now, I would have thought, I was expecting her, Theresa May, to run till 2020. And although I didn't agree with everything, I wasn't too signed up to net zero, to put it mildly. But I did think that she was a compromiser in the best sense of the word.
Can I ask about Brexit or not? Because we're going in quite deep on your political history, so that seems like quite a significant moment.
Yes, I voted Remain.
Yes,
but I wasn't.
But I'm just mentioning that because it makes your warmth towards Theresa May much easier to understand. A lot of people who voted the other way would found it close to unconscionable, I think, given the febrile nature of political discourse at the time.
Well, I do think that Theresa May, you know, the cliche was she had a poison chalice. I don't think she did. I think that Parliament, basically, the Conservative Party certainly should have got behind her. And I think that, you know, the Labour Party missed a trick by not getting behind her either. I think that, you know, deals... I remember I was having an art exhibition in 2019 in Brighton when it had dragged on till then. You know, the summer of 2019, it's still dragging on. A Swiss man came up to me and he said, I don't understand you guys. I thought deals were done with the cash in people's pockets. I didn't understand you voted on them. And he was making a pretty simple point. We could have just moved on. That we had the momentum with Angela Merkel. We could have made the deal in, you know, just signed up. Europe passed it. You know, Europe passed it, and we could have worked out the detail later, and we could have just had some momentum. But
respectfully.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I do actually mean it. I'm not one of those people who says respectfully when I'm about to, to eviscerate somebody. I think in a sort of academic crucible, never mind a pub, everything you say is true, but you've completely forgotten about the British media.
Yes, I have. Well, I agree.
Do you remember what the Daily Mail was doing at this point in British history? It was attacking High Court judges. It was attacking university academics. It was attacking Conservative MPs and calling them saboteurs, which is hideous language at the best of times. So, I mean, you might be right on one level, on one theoretical academic level, but there is no earthly way Theresa May could have done that in a country where the Daily Mail, the Daily Telegraph, the Daily Express and Nigel Farage existed.
Well, James, if I may...
respectfully, though.
I'm someone that tends to ignore the media.
Well, then your political analysis is fatally compromised, Robert.
Well, I would say that I voted for Boris Johnson as a Remain voter. Get this. I voted for Boris Johnson in 2019, but for me, he had 1 year making it 5. The election should have been in 2020. Yeah. That's my arithmetic.
OK, but why do you think that the Conservative Party today, under Kemi Badenoch, is not on life support?
She's talking to people. She's grafting. She's not making big speeches. I'm almost accidentally following her on Facebook, and she's quietly talking to a wide number of people, and I think her sincerity, and I believe what she says, I believe that she will do things, gets her my vote. I do not think they are finished at all.
Okay. Well, I mean, we've not put much flesh on the bones.
Well, I would say this. I think that the thing is, I think that these defects to Remain are
I think the correct word is defections, but I like defects. I'm going with defects. No, I'm going with defects. Defects works much better. Go on.
Okay, well, I think that, I stand to be corrected, but these defectors, I would say that what they're doing is largely superficial. If, for instance, you wanted to be tough on the channel, which I've never seen in my lifetime, I'm near a couple of migrant hotels, but they're lovely hotels. And, in some ways, I wish the arrangements there were formalised. My fear with them is they'll just be knocked down, in cheap houses. The thing that I think is important I've never seen these things in the channel, occur, in rubber boats, high visibility jackets.
And even if you had, you're not going to feel any impact on your life. But that puts you in a very honest constituency, and it's not a minority, but it's completely unrepresented in the media that you quite wisely avoid. There was some polling around at the weekend showing that immigration comes in as the second biggest concern for the population, about 48%. And yet, if you ask for you personally, is it for you as in things that would improve your life? It falls down the charts faster than
It's a symptom.
But people think it's a massive issue, and then when they're asked whether it's a massive issue for them, they have to admit that it isn't. And that is a consequence of the media that you steer clear of. I need to pick you up on the grafting.
Yeah,
Robert.
Sure.
I don't know which. I mean, anecdotes are not necessarily.
Well, I go by lived experience.
And your lived experience is that Kemi Badenoch is a grafter.
Well, I do see her quietly.
A lot of people say that she's
visiting somewhere in Reigate, visiting somewhere in Shropshire,
right.
And she is actually talking to farmers.
All politicians
councillors.
All politicians do. Certainly, all party leaders do that.
But she seems to be genuinely sitting down in pretty bland rooms with Formica tables and pencils and
you could have rung up to say the opposite. The party's over and done with and she's useless, and you could have cited exactly the same evidence. I follow her on Facebook, James, and all she's doing is visiting farms and sitting down in rooms with Formica tables and talking to people, and she's not landing any punches at all on the...
I think because she's connecting with people like myself who would like to see something done, actually honestly done.
And it could have been
done a long time ago.
Done about what?
Oh, well, I think that for instance, I mean, it doesn't keep me awake at night, whatever. I find generally, and we spoke, briefly about 2 years ago, where I said, the 1,000 cuts of living get me down more than anything. Suddenly I've got to pay a charge for the Blackwall Tunnel. Suddenly I find I'm doing fine for doing 22 miles an hour. Erratic billing. Those are the things that really annoy me.
Right.
But I do think that there was legislation that the Conservatives put in place to actually sort of use force in the Channel to stop those criminal gangs. There was a couple of children died, crushed. This is awful. We're a nation of voyeurs. We should do something there. It's very disrespectful to Europe.
They had 14 years to do that.
Well, I do think that reform. If Reform were a serious party, they'd be talking about reinstigating the policies that the Conservative.
You've got the law as well. You have to. I mean, I'm going to say respectfully now, and I'm probably going to be a bit disrespectful. But I apologise in advance. But I don't know that any of the sentences you said can sit logically before or after the sentences that preceded and succeeded them. I mean, first of all, I'm not that bothered about immigration or the small boats, but we should use force against them. I think Kemi Badenoch is working. You may have done more harm by trying to claim that the Conservative Party is not finished than you intended to when you rang in to claim that it isn't. You may have made it a little bit clearer how impossible it is to put together a cogent or cohesive notion of what they actually represent. And a few people are pointing out, if the biggest issue, seriously, in your life is the Blackwall Tunnel, then your life is probably pretty good. So the question of why arithmetically, if not in the opinion polls, the major party of opposition is failing completely to land any punches at all on a government that is enduring not quite unprecedented, but certainly extraordinary levels of unpopularity and difficulty, is a question of existential survival. And it's not just the character that's defected today to the Reform organisation who is talking about the Conservative Party being done and dusted. It's a lot of other people as well. My only hesitation comes from crediting this Kruger character with far too much significance than he actually deserves. I'm just being reminded of some of the things that he's done in the past as well. So, as you'd expect from an early defection, you remember, I think Douglas Carswell was one of the first, and he's stopped even trying to hide his racism now on social media as he lives as an immigrant in a foreign country, and spews racism about immigrants in this country on a regular basis. You always get the weirdos defecting first. The big question for Farage has always been whether any of the non-weirdos would defect later, and that question still stands. Whether or not the defection of a weirdo today means the Tory party is under existential threat, I do not know. But remember that David Cameron thought it was, with a smallish majority. David Cameron thought it was under threat. When he promised a referendum, because the weirdos kept defecting, 2 or 3 of them, Douglas Carswell, Mark Reckless, was there anybody else? So it didn't matter that they were weirdos. The defections were enough to convince the leader to undertake contortions that have contributed more than almost anything else to the mess that the country finds itself in today. So calling the referendum you could put on the list, couldn't you? You're making the list of all the things the Tories have done that have brought this country to the current catastrophic condition that it finds itself in many ways. Boris Johnson, Brexit, the referendum itself, which tore the country down the middle in ways that are yet to be healed or yet to be repaired. Then you've got Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, all Tory ideas, all Tory policies, all Tory politicians, all Tories. Which means that I think for a decent Tory, the sight of these people who brought it all on us, swimming away, claiming that their vessel has been wrecked or sabotaged, is really, really unpleasant. The problem, as Robert has unintentionally highlighted, is that you voted for all of those things that have wrecked the country anyway. So who literally votes for the Tories now? If you were opposed to Brexit, you can't really vote for them because they're still pretending it was a good idea. If you left the party because Boris Johnson was a menace and a liability and a model of depravity, you can't vote for the party now because that side, the side of the party in charge is still canonising him. If you thought that Liz Truss's fiscal event was an absolute disaster, you can't really vote for them because they're now trying to blame all manner of ills upon the Labour government that didn't have a single finger on the reins of power between 2010 and 2014. So who exactly votes for them except the tribalist, except the fully paid up member of the footballification model. I do not know. Why wouldn't I mourn it? Why would I be sad if the Conservative Party was over? Partly, 52% be careful what you wish for, and 48%, what on earth will replace it? Here's Amelia Cox with your headlines.
James O'Brien on LBC.
3 minutes after 12 is the time. I'll probably forget, but just in case I don't, stay tuned to find out why it's all my fault, according to Terry in Southgate on the Ali Mirage show yesterday. Look at me, bigging up Ian Dale's phoning with Kemi Badenoch, bigging up the Ali Mirage show. Such a team player, always got room for Natasha Clark on the programme, never ambush her with unfair questions. And Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor, joins me now. Danny Kruger has defected from the Tories to Reform. Who cares?
That's a good question, James, but you're such a team player these days. I knew you'd never throw such a harsh question my way. Definitely not live on the radio either. But yes, look, this is a big deal, James. Danny Kruger has defected from the Conservative Party to Reform. The reason why it's a big deal is because it's the first serving MP that's currently an MP that's sitting in Parliament to do so. Obviously, he will face, and he did face this morning, the questions about whether he would trigger a by-election to go over to the Reform Party. It's also crucially important because he was such an instrumental...
Sorry to interrupt. Spoiler alert, of course he won't.
Of course he won't. Yeah, absolutely not. And he refused just now. I was speaking to him, refusing again to promise that, saying, I've not changed. Well, actually, mate, you've actually just changed political party. It's quite a big deal. Another reason why this is a big deal today, James, is because Danny Kruger did play a very instrumental role in the Boris Johnson government. He did work as Boris Johnson's principal private secretary. Then he went on to be a Conservative MP. And also, crucially now, he's a member of Kemi Badenoch's top team. So hugely embarrassing for her today to see one of her own members. And I asked him today, did you actually even call Kemi Badenoch and tell her, give her the decency of the heads up? And he couldn't answer that. So I think that's probably a no there, James. But speaking a little earlier today at this press conference here in central Westminster, Nigel Farage, it started off with this introduction.
The only responsible thing that we can do is to prepare. And that's why I announced at conference we'd be setting up a department preparing for government. And that is the responsible thing that we're going to do. And that process starts today when we take on somebody who will head up that department, find talent, find people with experience in the civil service, in government, and help us get ready for what will be a monumental task. Radical change in a country like this is not easy, but it's necessary. Because if it's not done, many of us believe this country will be well and truly sunk. So the man that has been given the job, this enormous responsibility, is a Member of Parliament for East Wiltshire. His name is Danny Kruger.
That was Nigel Farage introducing Danny Kruger to the stage. And it was a pretty tightly controlled announcement today. Nobody really had any whiff that this guy was about to defect. And like I say, he's the first sitting MP to go off to Nigel Farage's party since the general election. And obviously, I know that you and I, James, keep a very, very tight tally on the number of Reform MPs and whether they hold the whip and how many are being lost and found.
It's 6.
We've found another one. We've got another one back in the party.
So what is it now? 5? 7?
It's now 5, so we're now up to 5 again, which is what they were, of course, after the general election. We've lost some, we've gained some, but we're on 5 right now. Here is Danny Kruger speaking as he was announced by Nigel Farage this lunchtime.
The Conservative Party is over. Over as a national party. Over as the principal opposition to the left. But I am not despondent, because conservatism is not over. It's never been needed more, and actually it's never been more vibrant. Because the failure of the Conservative Party has created space for an alternative. The flame is passing from one torch to another.
And James, I thought actually some of the most damning words from Danny Kruger were about his old party. He said, I like Kemi Badenoch personally, but the problem's the party. We've got a very toxic brand. They're not dead, but they are over. It's unlikely they will ever recover significantly. Of course, Westminster watchers will know that he was quite instrumental in the Robert Jenrick leadership campaign last year. He says, I wish he'd won. He would have made a much better go of it, would have really taken the fight to Labour. He accused Kemi Badenoch of basically hiding for the last year and not saying anything at all. So really damning about his old party. And like I say, you and I might not have heard too much about Danny Kruger before, but this is a really instrumental day, I think, for Nigel Farage to be able to say, look, we've got one extra MP, more people are coming. It is a bit of a drip with Conservative MPs, Conservative politicians, big former big beasts, more and more people coming over to the party. And Danny Kruger will be quite crucial to Reform's preparations for government, because he has served at the very highest levels of government in the past and will have quite a good sort of hand on the tiller about exactly how they do so and how they prepare if and when an election comes.
I'm just trying to refresh my memory about him a bit. I know that he's Prue Leith's son, and she wrote an article, I think, for The Spectator, expressing her disagreement with him on something he said in Parliament about thinking that women disagreeing with the idea that women have an absolute right to bodily autonomy in this matter. We know that when the evangelical, quotes, Christian end quotes, wing in America sneeze, Nigel Farage often catches a cold. It may be too early for you to answer this question, but can you see this signalling a shift in their party policy if they currently have one on abortion, on women's rights?
Yeah, I think so. Danny Kruger is very has a very Christian background and is been very.
So do I. That's not a synonym for being anti-abortion.
No, not at all. But he, and obviously Nigel Farage's views on abortion, and he's spoken about this before. I think it's fair to say that he is more conservative on abortion than many other politicians in Parliament. Danny Kruger is very, very conservative on issues of the day. He's spoken out really quite powerfully about the assisted dying debate. He is against that, doesn't believe that is something that's compatible with his Christian views. And yeah, it's fair to say that, there are some slightly more illiberal views in the form of Danny Kruger, in the form of Nigel Farage, that I'm sure will be attacked by some people in the Labour Party, who will feel that is a dangerous sort of shift that the party is taking. They said earlier today, on assisted dying, we're not going to take some sort of strong position on this. This is something that obviously divides all of the political parties right now, assisted dying and things like that. So I totally agree with you. It's probably a little bit too early to see whether this will be a direction that will change the party. But I think, like I say, a lot of his conservative views, I'm sure many people in the Reform Party will privately share them too.
We shall see. Thank you. Nobody honest guessed. Well, one person tells me that he did guess. Everyone else admitted that they cheated. When I asked you earlier to identify which weird Tory had now defected to the Reform Party. Listen, I mock this stuff. I'm not underestimating the seriousness. Just because it's all happened again before doesn't mean it won't go better for Farage this time. But a couple of weirdos defect, the Tories panic, something changes, yada yada. Here we go, and that is why, of course, we will cover it in the depth that it deserves, as we just did. 12:41 is the time. Are they finished? Is a question. Sue in Thurrock has an answer. Sue, what is it?
Hi, James.
Hello, Sue.
We spoke a couple of months ago where I was very sad.
Oh, how are you feeling now? What were you sad about?
I'm feeling even sadder now.
Oh, no, honestly.
I'm in my 60s and I've always voted Conservative.
Right.
Apart from last time, because last time I just couldn't vote for them. Because of all the radical weirdos.
Yeah, I remember. You're what? You haunt my dreams, Sue in Thurrock.
Do I really?
You really do. Because I need to know how many of you there are. Because think about this. Because I remember why you were sad. So forgive me for praising what you're thinking. So you find the current Tory iteration is too weird.
Mm-hmm.
Farage and his crew are too dodgy or too nasty. Keir Starmer is now, I think it's fair to say, deeply disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you? I mean, how many of you are there, and where the heck do you go?
Well, this is the thing. Is sort of one of the things that I was going to say is last week, I had a vague glimmer of hope because I was listening to PMQs, and I thought Kimmy did so well.
She did
to begin with.
She absolutely did.
And then she lost all credibility with me when she mentioned strikes, because I suddenly thought, nearly 3 years of rail strikes.
Yeah.
Nurses went on strike for the first time ever.
Yeah.
All those doctors' strikes. Does she think that people like me have had a complete brain wipe of the previous 14, 15 years?
This is why you haunt my dreams. Because I think they all behave as if everyone's had a brain wipe. Yeah. They all behave a bit like that now.
And I came up with the phrase that you actually wanted: always complain, never explain.
Always complain, never explain. You did. You're right. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Well, maybe haunt my dreams is a bit of hyperbole, but I remember precisely, because when politicians are always, during general election campaigns, they're always trying to identify one individual who sums up the crucial voter. I think there must be so many people that are traditional, lifelong Conservatives that don't recognise the party that their party has become, but they're never going to shift to Reform, because Reform is like the even worse version of what the Conservative Party has now become. What's left? What's in the middle? What's left?
And I do actually fear that the same sort of thing could happen to the Labour Party.
Yeah.
With all the real far left.
Yes, it's possible.
There is sort of, putting the kibosh on anything that the government actually wants to do.
Oh, what a tangled web we weave. What about Ed Davey? Has he never? You don't like the look of the Liberal Democrats ever?
At the last election, I was looking at Liberal Democrats, but like the Liberal Democrat, sort of candidate, seemed to sort of pivot from, sort of constituency to constituency, just trying to get elected.
Oh, fair enough. So you were doing a very personal perspective on how you were going to vote in the last election, rather than
because I couldn't vote Conservative, and so I ended up voting. And I've got to say, my local MP, I think she's brilliant. She's Labour, and she's really good because she's doing a lot of stuff within the community.
Right.
So from that point of view, I think she's great. But I really do. I fear for the future. I really do.
Yeah, I know why.
And I think the bravest thing that Keir Starmer could actually do is go for a proportional representation.
Well, do you know what you've done? Because we haven't mentioned the Greens either, have we?
No.
And I think they're going to do a little bit better than anybody's expecting. And so far, I don't want to issue the curse of O'Brien on anybody. I like the way the new leader is conducting himself. He's got a very good social media game, which is hugely important these days, but he's also good in the studios. So Zach Polanski, I think, is going to change the Greens' fortunes in interesting ways. You've got the Liberal Democrats on the march. You've got the Reform outfit cannibalising the traditional Tory vote. You've got increased dissatisfaction with Labour, and the Jeremy Corbyn project, which I think has it got a name yet? I think it's imminently going to have a name, if it hasn't got a name already. That could, of course, split the Labour vote as well. So you're going to have a first-past-the-post general election with the most split electorate this country has ever seen. And the result of that could be absolutely horrific. You could have parties that had more votes than another party ending up with no seats. It's bad enough, first past the post, when there are new kids on the block. But when there are 3 or 4 new kids on the block, it could be absolutely stunning.
And then you have the apathy as well.
You've always got the apathy.
Whereas, Reform might get more seats if you have proportional representation, but so would the Greens, so would the Liberals.
Exactly. And we'd have a sort of continental Europe mode of politics where people have to do deals with each other and compromise a lot more and do a little bit of cattle trading, and we're still a bit allergic to that, but we might have to grow up and get over ourselves.
And also, you probably end up with less people feeling disenfranchised. I felt disenfranchised in the last Conservative government.
What a great point. Because even if you're part of a minority government, then at least you are represented at some level at the table of power. Or if you're in opposition and you're likely to get a seat in an alternative government from a minority. Yeah, I like this a lot. If I asked you...
Also,
go on. I
was also going to say, because, even if you're not part of the actual government, with proportional representation, you feel like your vote is counted.
Yeah. I mean, this could be a big... again, it's Nick Clegg, isn't it? Flipping heck. Sold the family silver in return for a referendum on electoral reform, and I don't think proportional representation was even on the ballot in the end, in its purest form, and it was a disastrous campaign anyway. But I'm going to call it the Sue factor, if that's all right with you, Sue.
You are perfectly welcome.
Thank you very much. Now, always complain, never explain. And who speaks to Sue? Who speaks to Sue? Is it whom? Oh, I prefer who. Who speaks to Sue? Seriously. So the Tories have gone bonkers. Apologies if that upsets you, but come on, open your eyes. Brexit, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Kwasi Kwarteng. Now, Nadine Dorries, they're absolutely crackers. Has she defected? I think she might have defected. It's so hard to keep up. So they've gone crackers, and the things that they've gone crackers about are essentially Nigel Farage flavoured. So you can't go to Nigel Farage if you're the kind of Tory that's been alienated by the Tories going crackers, because their breed of crackersness is very Farage flavoured. So you turn your attention next to the Labour Party, and you could have lent Keir Starmer your vote at the last election, and the first thing he did was put up your grand's heating bills. And everything he's done since, including making the paedophile's friend ambassador to America and then being humiliated by it subsequently, has been, shall we say, suboptimal. And yes, the workers' rights bill looks impressive, and renters are quite a lot better off, and there are things that you could sell, but he's not doing a very good job of selling them. And you're never going to go, A, because he's had 2 cracks of the whip already, and B, because he doesn't exactly instill great confidence with you. You're not going to go lurching further to the left. From the Tory party to Jeremy Corbyn would be quite a journey if he ends up leading the party that he's founding. So where on earth do you go? I mean, this could be one of the abiding questions of the next couple of years, couldn't it? Unless Keir Starmer pulls his socks up or the Labour Party sort themselves out, who speaks for Sue? Or indeed you? Answer now, currently, nobody. That is really scary. It's 10-1. I've got Roman Kemp joining us in the studio next with some... important, actually, with a very important visit to the studio, which you can find out more about after this.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It's 12:52. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. Sometimes when a big name is promoting a good cause, it is a marriage of convenience. It's sincere, but the big name won't have had that much to do with the good cause. I want to make it clear from the outset that the cause that Roman Kemp is here to talk about is not only one that is very close to his heart, but as the Premier League launches its new initiative Together Against Suicide, this one, Roman, is actually your idea.
Yeah. Firstly, thanks for having me, mate.
Always.
Lovely to see you. This was an idea that kind of came nearly 2 years to the day, and I'd been seeing constantly, different Premier League clubs doing different things for Mental Health Awareness Day or Mental Health Awareness Week or Suicide Prevention Day. And it always kind of felt to me like a little bit of a, you don't want to say box ticking, but it was like a club would bring out like maybe a video that was fantastic, but it would only be for that day. There've been some amazing anti-suicide awareness videos being made from the likes of Wolverhampton and Norwich as well that did really well. But I never saw all clubs just come together and actually say, you know what, we stand for this as a league, as a group, as a collective, pushing rivalries aside. And then when I thought about it, I was like, the idea in itself is simple, because every time I'm an Arsenal fan, I go every home game, I go a lot of away games, and I recognise something, that every time I walk into a football stadium, there is the demographic for suicide standing in front of me every single time. There's around 60,000 people standing in front of me. But I would only ever see, and rightly so, I would see causes such as no room for racism. I would see, inclusivity, great stuff around LGBT. But yet I would never see a mention of the biggest killer in what is their demographic, which is men under the age of 50 and women under the age of 35. There was nothing really around suicide on a match day. So the idea then progressed to, how do I get every single club in the league on a match day to promote something that is an outlet for someone who is feeling suicidal? I mean, the numbers are still, everyone always bangs on about numbers, but they are shocking. I mean, it's 1 in 4 men have suicidal thoughts throughout their life. Every 90 minutes, which is, it's the length of a football game. It's a weird kind of marriage of fact that's happened. Every 90 minutes in the UK, someone dies by suicide. And so it was kind of put on us to kind of go, okay, how do we make this work? So then the idea became, you've got 20 Premier League clubs. Each club knows their fans and their fan base more than anyone. It can't be a one-size-fits-all situation. Samaritans are a big part of this, and they've helped navigate this absolutely perfectly. But it's the local charities that are around that football club that know their fans, and they're the ones that are going to help. Because currently, if a suicidal person has those thoughts, usually what they will end up doing is they will either end up presenting themselves at A&E, which is not the best place, or they would then be pushed by NHS and CAMS, who are stretched at their, stretched to their max at the minute.
So the relationship's already there.
Yeah, the relationship's already there. Exactly. And I think that this outlet of having local charities attached to local suicide charities attached to a football club, each football club on a match day, means that those match day goers can, confidently and confidentially, scan a QR code that is in their football stadium, the place where they feel safe, and within 2 to 3 days in some cases speak to a charity that can see them.
Just to give them that ear and that shoulder, and without having to either go through the bureaucracy you describe or jump through the hoops that are often incomplete, aren't they? There's the experiences. Tell me about the moment you had the idea. Were you at a game?
I was at a game. I was at a game. It was about, as I say, 2 years ago, around April time, and then it wasn't until that following, kind of November, I was alongside Vinay Venkatesham, he used to be the CEO of Arsenal, and now he's the CEO of Tottenham Hotspur. And I took the idea to Vinay, and Vinay is someone and he's always been very open that suicide was something kind of out of his remit. He'd never really been personally affected by it. But I've never seen someone grasp an idea and want to push this as much as possible. He then put me in touch with Richard Masters, the head of the Premier League, and it took all of 5 minutes in a phone call to make it happen. And
then you've got 20 individual clubs to sign up, which isn't necessarily the easiest job on the planet.
It's not the easiest, but listen, Vinay and Richard have been amazing with that. So now we're in a position where every single match day in the Premier League for the rest of the season, and looking ahead to next season, we've got all 20 clubs backing this initiative, and it's simply amazing.
And I mean, simply, you've explained it, I think, pretty perfectly. So you're there and you're harbouring these thoughts, or you're looking over that precipice, and you don't know what to do, and you don't know where to turn. And here is something you can just use your phone to access, and it will just give you some guidance and help on people who may be able to help you.
Exactly, and it's coming from your football club, and the crazy.
I think that's crucial.
Yeah, your football club. We did the stats, and it's 70% of men are more likely to speak to their football club than they are their own GP.
And there it is. Yeah. We should mention. You mentioned that Vinay didn't have personal connection with the issue. You of course do. You've made incredible documentaries since our colleague. Was in this building, and your close friend Joe Lyons took his own life 5 years ago. I presume this is still, or for you, part of keeping his memory.
Of course. It's, you know what it is. It's like, when it comes to Joe, who used to work at LBC, used to work here. Joe was my best friend, a Spurs fan, nonetheless. And every year, whenever I, would go into his grave or anything like that, or I'd go and see him whenever I can. I don't really tend to speak to a grave, but I would always leave it kind of tongue in cheek, and I'd say, by the way, mate, Spurs still haven't won anything. And then it was
not anymore.
No, but this was the thing, and it's moments like that are kind of so bittersweet, because it crushes me, because I just wish I could have just said to him, just stay, just stay. It's good times are coming, and that's that message that you want to push out to all of those fans.
The link between these three issues there, between football, between suicide, and between communication between men. I don't think you could have nailed all three of those better than with that single anecdote right there. That's incredible. And so is the whole scheme, Together Against Suicide, which is up and running now at your Premier League club. Roman, always good to see you, man. Thank you for that. It's coming up to 1 o'clock. I should give you the number of the Samaritans in case you are affected by any of these issues. They're there, of course, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 116 123. If you missed any of today's show, you can listen back on Catch Up on Global Player and the LBC app. Do you miss this bit of the job? You can stay up to date on the top stories and opinions, put your news categories in the order you want, pause and rewind live radio, and listen to a range of podcasts. So do download the official LBC app for free from your app store now. Tom Swarbrick will be with you at 4 on LBC, but now it's time for Sheila Fogarty.
James O'Brien on LBC.